Oh, you know what we have to do? This may come up tonight, but I got to look for those emails about the bike committee, the Upper Charles Trail, because they all pick terms.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Ashland Board of Selectmen live hybrid meeting for April 6th, 2022. In accordance with the Governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely or in a combination with a hybrid meeting setup, following these requirements of the open meeting law. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live via WACA-TV, providing the residents a safe environment to view and participate in tonight's meeting. To participate while at home, the Zoom meeting number is 818-650-65898. If you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand and you'll be called on in the appropriate manner. Okay, thank you. With that, I see that we have some people in the audience live, and welcome. It's been a long time since we've had people sitting live in these seats, and it's nice. It's nice to get back to some sense of normalcy. But I do have to ask, because we have people in the audience, is there anybody here this evening recording this meeting live? If not, so be it. That's great. And I call this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Mr. Asenko, being the gentleman that you are, I would ask that if you would all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a pretty active agenda this evening, and we'll try to get through it as quickly as we can. But having said that...
Mr. Chair, could I just do a sound check? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you fine, sir.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. How are we doing over there? Can you hear us okay? That's the question.
Yes, very nice.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Right now, I'll ask for citizens' participation. I see there are some people out there. Mark, I see your hand is raised. We'll ask Mr. Dissoni if you can, or Sue, if you can unmute Mr. Dissoni, that would be great.
Assume that I know how to by now. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and the people in the hall. Must be good to take in the extra air now and then. I appreciate me having coming on and being alerted to how well the town is doing. And my thing was I was going to ask, but it was already done by Izzy, and he did a great job. But usually when I'm there, I've been told to lead it in. That was about 2 or 3 years ago, when I was in the front seat and Joe asked me to stand up and take the Pledge of Allegiance. So I appreciate Izzy. Appreciate that, all that. And one good positive thing that came out of the Monday night multi-ball closed housing. Randy, great job. It's good to have a veteran out there by now knowing how to take a crowd and just conduct all well for the good things, everything that came through it. And I was first to lead off with the citizen participation and questions, and you answered a couple of them. But I found out one answer I wanted to get that wasn't sent to me. But I found out that in 2015, when the comprehensive plan was first introduced, my question was, what happened to it ever since? And the answer I got from other people was, we haven't got one. Is that true?
There we go. Okay. So you're right, Mark. The 2015 comprehensive plan was never completed. My understanding is that the last one was from, I mean, Yolanda probably can talk a little bit more to it because she had worked on it.
I believe 2003 was the last one. 2015, the planning board had a committee start the process. We were just about to the end line, and it got questioned by many people, and the planning board pulled the plug in 2015. We were probably about 2 years in. It was probably 2017 when we were almost done, and then we were told we were asked to stop. And then I believe a year later, the select board asked Michael to do a strategic plan, which is a little bit different. And I know that is being worked on, and we're hoping to see something soon.
Right. And Yolanda, I believe there were a couple elements that your group did complete.
We had a very, very fleshed out draft.
Right.
And like I said, we were probably at 90 or 95% of that draft, and then we just couldn't approve a final plan by some of the members of the committee, so it got put on hold at that point.
Okay.
And so I'll just add that, that we're thinking about doing it for the fall town meeting, right? There's some discussion. Of course, it's not formal, but it's under active discussion, Mark.
Okay, thank you. And one quick thing, I said in an email to the town manager is I want to say it in the public that everybody else that knows it. I again thank you for putting up the Ukrainian flag at the entrance of town hall and putting up all the information for the Ukrainians relief source being solidified together and understanding that this town is looking out for them as across the whole world is. And as this one citizen that lived in this town lifelong, I want to say to the Ukrainians, it must be really tough to have a twilight zone now happen and consider what happened about a month ago when life was good. So thank you for putting the Ukrainian flag out and putting that information out, and have a good meeting.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate that. I don't know if there's anybody. Mr. Asenko.
Good evening. Izzy Asenko, 9 Lakeview Terrace. I'm here to let the town know that, excuse me, that the process for the police. Sure. Okay. I'm not used to this.
It's new.
Thanks, Izzy. I can hear you now. I couldn't before.
Oh, I wish you didn't hear me anyway. But anyways, I'm going to start. I'll start over again. Izzy Asenko, 9 Lakeview Terrace. I just want to publicly let the public know how much I enjoyed being on the police screening committee. I don't know who really put. I know I was asked by the town manager quite a while ago, but whoever put this really together, they did a heck of a job. A lot of diversity on the committee, and we had help from. I want to mention his name, Chief John Moore from Holliston Police Department. He's retired, and he guided us along in a direction where I think the town's going to be very happy, whoever we choose here. I really enjoyed it, and that's the reason why I'm here. I really enjoyed it. It's one of the highlights. I'm going to call it one of the highlights of my career, being on this committee. It was very emotional for me, a lot of it. And I just want to let the public know that they're in good hands going forward with our new chief here. Okay? And thank you for taking the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Asenko, and thank you for your dedicated service to Ashland, as always. And thank you to Michael for getting all that together with Jen and getting the strategy set up for the process. I think it balanced itself out, and I'm sure that we'll all be very happy and grateful whenever it's completed, sooner than later. Okay, the earliest, right. Okay, with that, seeing that there is no one else for citizens' participation, we appreciate that. I'm going to ask that we have a 7:10 appearance, and that is with Mr. Terry Campbell. Good evening, Mr. Campbell. If you would come up to the podium, please. I just ask that you introduce yourself and discuss the reasons why you would like to be on the Sustainability Committee, because we do have a vacancy.
Yes. Hi, I'm Terry Campbell from at 3 Cirrus Drive in the Cirrus Apartments complex. And I moved to Ashland about 13 months ago. Coming from Illinois and Iowa and on back, several other states and country in there. I've been interested in sustainability for a while. A lot of my interest comes from having worked in the space industry many years ago and being very familiar with closed loop systems, that kind of thing, with space station kind of sustainability. And now as we move forward into potential moon base and Mars colonization and that kind of thing, one of the things that we learned about the space program back in the late 60s and early 70s was there's technology there to transfer to regular everyday life. I guess the thing I grew up with was Tang, right? Some of you may remember Tang. That we got that from the space industry, right? So there are a lot of things we can learn from the sustainability that we're doing with space. And you've heard of Spaceship Earth and things like Spaceship Ashland, or Ashland, however you want to say. I'm a transplant, remember?
That's okay.
So the idea is, I'm probably not going to get involved in going to the moon or in a moon base, but I can work to bring that technology here. And that's my angle, my interest. There's a lot of and I want to contribute, I want to do something. The kids are out of the house, so there's time to do more now. So, and we're out of the house, we're in an apartment now. We sold the house in Illinois.
Very good. I'll open it up to questions from the board. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, thank you, Mr. Campbell, and I think, that was my question reading your resume, your application about the connection with space. Mm-hmm. And I think you've done a great job of explaining that and how you would connect it to sustainability here in Ashland. When I didn't anticipate you were going to mention Tang. I thought you were going to mention maybe like a $5,000 hammer that,
No, I was in the Air Force and I was in the procurement side, project engineering. The whole expensive camera thing was really, you took the cost of the airplane and divided it by the number of parts. And that's how you ended up with $5,000 commodes or something like that, because you just divided by.
Well, I think, you certainly bring, I think, a unique view to this committee, and I think you'd be certainly a valuable asset to being a member there. So thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
So Terry, thank you so much for wanting to be a part of the Sustainability Committee. As you may know, there's a lot on their plate with the net zero plan that they're putting together. Have you been able to attend meetings so you kind of have a good sense of the types of things that they're working on?
Yes, I've been attending since December, and in anticipation of going through this process, I'll be participating next week in the library presentation of a piece of the net zero plan.
Okay.
The energy portion.
Great. Thank you.
So first of all, welcome, even though you've been here for a while, but welcome to Ashland. Thank you for stepping up. We are always looking for volunteers, so I think your wife might be next for something. we have the habit of finding one person in a family and bringing another one aboard. I love your connection of how you're looking to take that technology from space. I, too, found that interesting when I looked at your resume. I was like, So how is this going to work? But I think you explained it very well. And I would say just thank you, and I'm glad to hear you're participating in the session next week. Thank you again for stepping up.
Hey,
Rob?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick, so Terry, and I'm sorry, I'm unable to see you, but which probably isn't that important anyway. But that's all right. That's all right. So you're familiar with the goals of the Okay, thank you. You're familiar with the goals of the Sustainability Committee, and you're committed to trying to combat climate change through sustainability. Is that correct? Or, I mean,
Yes. Yes, there are, net zero is one aspect of sustainability that we're looking at. There are other aspects, maybe some of the details of the net zero plan. And that would include things like where they did the heat pumps and solar panels,
Sure.
that kind of push,
All right,
the
thank you.
compost,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
great, thank you. That's a good, I like your answer. So thank you for coming forward.
We're happy that you like his answers. Thank you. Thanks, Terry. Thank you. Unless there are no other questions or discussions with it, I would entertain a motion at this time to appoint Mr. Campbell to the Sustainability Committee.
With a term expiring on 8/31/24. So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye, or hand.
Aye.
Aye, that's 5-0. Mr. Campbell, congratulations, good luck, and we look forward to many meetings with you and further discussions. Don't forget, Velcro came out of the aerospace
Yes.
program too, so, which is always a good thing.
And I think Tang was a myth, though. I thought it was an advertising thing.
That's good stuff.
No, we drank it. It was there. It was on the shelves. It was there, believe me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
That's great. 7:20, we have a few minutes to go before we... Yeah, Paul is here. So, Paul, if you don't mind, would you... I know we had scheduled for 7:20. Would you like to go earlier? Sure. Okay, we have Paul Gustavson in front of us, and he wants to have a quick discussion on 433 Chestnut Street, and that is to review and approve window locations and style at that location. So, Paul, if you'd like to come up to the...
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can just do a little
if you would, please.
introduction.
Yep.
So if you remember, and if you recall, back in August of '21, the board authorized a historical deed restriction to be placed on the property, and part of that historical deed restriction had some renderings of what the property would look like. Paul had done a little bit of revisions. Actually, I think he went back and looked at the historical deed restriction and made some changes that were more in line with that. Came in to file a building permit, and so what I thought that there were some substantial changes to it, just with the windows, mainly the windows and the types of windows. So I thought it'd be appropriate to bring it back to the board. If you do approve it, we'll go ahead and file a revised deed restriction according to this. So, and I think mainly it's just window location and type, right, Paul?
Correct, yeah. So the Paul Gustavson, by the way, 10 Ensign Circle, Ashland.
Oh, Mike, yeah, push your mic.
The lot 10.
It's right, there you
The one
go.
that says, yeah, okay. So again, Paul Gustavson, 10 Ensign Circle, Ashland. And the original bid that was done in May of 2020, almost 2 years now, it contains some renderings showing what I propose to do with the building to restore it. And 2 years, and then 2 years has gone by, and I got another architect involved to flesh out the design and finalize design, tweak the floor plan, et cetera. And in doing so with the new architect, I was involved in hiring the first architect. That was my partner, who has since left the project. So the proposal, the bid included verbiage about the type of windows, but the picture, the renderings showed a different type of window. And so it's just a matter of clarity at this point to come back and request that we don't use the windows that are shown in the original renderings from 2020 because they are not historically accurate. They're actually modern windows. If you're familiar with casement windows, they're types that crank out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also awning windows that actually hinge at the top and pivot outwards. So those are not, those were developed in the 50s and 60s, and they're not historically, correct for this building. So what the new design, the one that I gave to the building department, has the proper windows, which are basically 2/2 up and down windows or double hung windows. So 2 meaning you have 2 panes with a vertical divider on the top and the same thing on the bottom sash of the window. So that's more accurate. If you've gone out and seen the building and paid closer attention, you'll see it's exactly what's on there now in most cases. The porch that's on there now was built, I don't know, 1940, 1930, and that of course has a different style of windows, but we'll eliminate that porch, and anything that's put there will have the 2/2. So that is why I'm here, and to request that change, that we use what we already see in the building. So you have a handout. So on the left-hand side is what the current building looks like. That's my architect did what they call existing conditions, or the current state of the property, of the home. The middle picture shows what I originally had put into the proposal in 2020, and then the right-hand picture is that design that has been fully, gone through the architectural process to come up with a set of drawings that we can get a permit with. So you can see in that picture, the windows look more accurate.
Any questions?
I would just, I guess, comment, we were out there, actually, I was out there with
good.
Rob and Michael on Sunday to
Okay.
just look, and I've seen the house, been inside the house several times, so I just like besides the use of more historically accurate windows, I just like the look of what you've done with the layout of the windows and
Okay.
and so on. So I'm certainly supportive of what you're proposing tonight.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, Yolanda?
I just have one question in regards to, as you're looking at the south elevation, you've moved the door, and it's now a double, almost looks like a French door versus what was
Sure,
originally. So the south elevation is the side that's facing the fields?
Yes. Correct.
So in your original plan, it was more of a traditional door like it has now?
Yeah, so just to get more light down in that area, I went with a French door that both,
Okay.
actually both will swing.
Swing open?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty dark down in that area, and the intent there was to create an entrance to the basement, but also create more natural light.
Okay. That was just one of the big things that I saw that looked different.
Yeah,
But-
what it's a trade-off. If you notice in another elevation of the back of the house, it faces the barn. The original design that we submitted had sliding glass doors.
Right,
2 of them,
yeah.
which looked awful. And again, I didn't work with that architect. I was kind of stuck with those renderings. We submitted the proposal. I had verbiage added that I had written into the proposal talking about 2/2 windows, hoping that would take precedence over what the picture showed. So in working with the current architect, we try to take the responsible approach and keep the building looking as accurate and historical as possible.
And is it going to be the same coloring that it is now, the
Oh,
white?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to be white wood siding, the 2/2 windows, of course. The roof will be black. We're going to redo all the wood trim and keep the same embellishments. It's a pretty modest house. There's not a lot of embellishments,
Yeah.
but where this crown on the outside of underneath where the gutters would go.
Yep.
Especially on the gable front end of the house, we'll maintain that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that going on.
Good. Those are the only questions I had.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead, Brandy.
So I don't really have a ton of questions for you. I do really like what you've done with this. I think it is a little bit more in line with what the spirit should be of the restoration. It does seem like there's a lot more windows than what currently is there, which I assume is because of the wanting to get more natural light into the house. And so I really do like what you've done with this. So
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Looking forward to get going on it.
I'm sure
It's
you
been a
are.
long time.
I'm sure you are, Paul.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, sure. Just a question for Michael. Michael, you mentioned the historic renderings. Is that the same as what Paul put in, or is there another set of plans that we had that we are comparing this to?
No, the leftmost side, Rob, of the diagram that Paul had sent to you, that's what's in the original, or excuse me, the middle, I'm sorry, the middle.
The middle one.
The
Okay,
middle
so
one is what's
so
in the
that's the
print.
one where Paul was describing like the awning type windows and the porch with all those windows.
Yes, and the casement
And
window.
that is what we were requiring.
That is what you were requiring, yes.
So this is, I would have to say, this is an improvement over.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, all right. So, I think it's, it seems to be an appropriate design, and I would say an improvement over the previous requirements, from what I can tell. So thank you
Yep.
for those changes, Paul.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Paul, on the final closing comments on this, I drive by there quite often, and that place brings a lot of great memories because I used to work up there when I was a young kid up at the Warrant Center. I was a kitchen boy, not a house mouse, but a kitchen boy out there. And there used to be many gatherings in that house years ago, so brings back some fond memories, and what you plan on doing is something that I look forward to.
I like to hear the old stories.
Oh, many good times in that house. And that's, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
So at this point, I will ask, we have to make a motion to approve the changes that are made?
Yeah,
Move to
motion
make the
to
change.
approve, yeah.
We approve the change in windows and window locations as presented, and thank you for making that change.
Okay.
I think that's very nice.
Yes.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay.
I didn't quite hear, I did get a comment from Catherine Jerzyk. I don't know if she wanted to say anything about this, if there's any public comment that people want to.
I don't see a
Add
hand
to
raised,
this.
so I mean, if she's willing to,
She might not have heard it. She might not have heard you ask to raise a hand.
Ah.
She's not on camera right now.
okay.
I'll stick around. I mean, I don't know if we can go back to it or not, but.
Catherine, are you monitoring? Do you have a question with respect to this?
Well, I know the historic restriction's pretty extensive, and I know we sold the property at an extremely low price to honor the exact look for the public. So I definitely have concerns about changing that, and we can say it looks better, but that's not
It
the
matches.
point of a historic restriction. So I feel like it's a little bit bait and switch what's happening, and maybe that is for the better, but when we do that, it kind of doesn't seem right to just show up at a select board meeting without more public involvement about that.
The new plan looks much more to the original of the house. Yeah, right. Well, there can
Yeah,
be
that's my
discussion.
opinion as well. Because I think those, as you said, Paul, those additions were in the 40s, or that porch and those unfortunate windows. So I don't know.
Yeah. And can I comment to Catherine directly?
Can we get this put up? Can we get the pictures put up on this, share on the screen? Do you have that ability or not? Can Susan?
Susan, can you get it up on the screen?
I don't know.
Right.
I'll have to see if I can pull it up. Hold on.
I'm not logged in, that's why I can't do it.
That's fine.
Is it, you can't hold something in front of this camera that can be seen? I can give it.
Yeah, except you're not on camera. Paul, if one of us held up the renderings, what kind of,
Well, if he has it on his note, Paul, if you have it on your notebook and you join the meeting, we can share your screen and, well, that's possible.
can someone hold up their paper? I don't have it on paper.
If you hold it up by the podium, I can zoom in on it, then we can get it. Okay.
Well, we have the paper.
Pretty quick. So, just talking about the south, probably the easiest one to look at this is right over there. This would be interesting. Can I?
So actually come around to this side and stand right there. That's the camera that's catching us.
Yeah. All right.
There you go.
All right, so, Catherine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Catherine?
yep.
All right, so
Yes.
the middle rendering here, there you go, perfect. That is what was proposed. And they're not accurate to the age of the home. The particular architect at the time spec'd out the type of windows that crank out. This is what the house looks like currently. If you're, it's almost an exact photograph or rendering of what it is now. You see there's like two window panes over two window panes, and the windows move up and down. So this, using casement windows that crank out or windows that pivot from the top, it just, those windows were around in the 1960s, they're used today. So what I'm proposing is to use, similar to here, my hands are going backwards to the thing, to use these windows here in this drawing, which are, again, similar to what you see on the left side of the page, which is a 2/2. Did you hear that?
Oh, I think that's cool. The historic restriction is like 40 pages and it was pretty clear to keep it. So I feel like it's just, contracts are important, to have the town honor, but we did say if it looks better, right? That's all. But I appreciate that people are trying to do something. It feels like it's not in keeping with what the way that whole contract went.
And the verbiage in the historical preservation agreement, which is a legal document, part of the contract, part of the purchase and sales, in the closing of the property, the verbiage calls out 2/2 windows that are similar to what's with the current home. Although this particular picture unfortunately made it into the bid, and that shows something different. So it's a clarification between two conflicting elements of the original bid. One being the rendering that shows the wrong windows, and the verbiage that describes the proper windows. So we're just clarifying that we're using the ones that are more in line with the history of the house.
I'm ready. There's been a motion, it's been seconded, thank you.
I don't think your mic is on.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's been a prior motion and a second on this particular item. And I've been asked to call for a vote, so with respect to that, and all those in favor of the changes that have been presented in front of us by Mr. Gustavson regarding 433 Chestnut Street, with respect to the new windows, or the actual windows that should have been presented originally on the original design, I ask for a vote.
Aye.
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 All right, so
Aye.
that's 5-0. Paul, congratulations, good luck. And I just want to have a quick note with respect to some of the, and I appreciate the comments that came from Catherine and the public, but this was addressed, and this was been out there for a while. To call it a bait and switch, I'm a little, maybe we could use better verbiage, but for me, that's not the way we play games here. We don't play games. We deal with direct and facts. So to call it bait and switch, I think was inappropriate at this point in time. I just had to say that for the record. Okay? All right. Thank you very much, Paul.
So, Paul, we will, so if I can get a copy, well, Doug has a copy of the plans.
Yeah.
If we can get it shrunk down to 8 by 10 level at some point, we'll refile it to the deed restriction, okay?
Update us on when you're doing stuff, and I live near there too, and so walk over, so I'd love to.
Yeah,
Walk over and
next
see what
step is
you're
get the permit and then try to corral my contractor, everyone's so crazy busy right now, but to get on this and get going on it, so I'm hoping this month, but probably next month. So, yeah, I can come in periodically and do an update.
Great.
Follow it on Facebook.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Next on the agenda is old and new business, and this is to review and adopt the naming policy for the new public safety building and the spaces in and around the building. So with that, we have in front of all of us wording with respect to the Town of Ashland naming policy and entities and memorials for the public safety building. And I'm going to turn it over to Steve Mitchell, because Steve did a lot of work on this. And I think we were in agreement with respect to this. This wording, if I remember correctly, is similar wording that the school committee has with respect to some of their naming policies and things. So this is not something new to the town. It's just that we changed the name and some things around it. So Steve, I'll hand it over to you.
So thanks, Joe. So it's really, and actually the select board has a naming policy as well that encompasses just general town properties. This is specific to the public safety building because there has been some suggestions already or comments about specific naming up situations. So this is really a duplication of the school committees, as you said, Joe, the school committee's version and the town's version, and it's just specific to the public safety building. It does require the naming of a subcommittee. When there's a request, a subcommittee is formed. It's a minimum of 3 individuals. One is going to be the police chief or his designee, his or her designee, the fire chief and his designee or his designee, and a citizen of the town. It's a minimum of 3. We can expand that committee and so on. So otherwise, I think, you've seen this just in another shape or form. So, I would suggest, we're moving fairly quickly towards completion of the building. So I'm assuming we'll start to address some of these requests fairly soon. So I would ask that we adopt this naming policy this evening.
Any questions? Go ahead, Yolanda.
2 things. One, you did ask her, you answered my question. So it's, as we get a request to name something, a subcommittee will be created. Will we have people on call that want to be on the subcommittee, or every time we go to create the subcommittee, we'll ask people who want to be involved?
I assume that would be the situation. We would solicit.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that someone who is, let's say, proposing naming, let's say, a room or something, has a rationale. I would think they'd want to participate in it. I would think. But
okay.
Again, it's to be determined, I would think, more so than anything else.
Because my question there would be is if I'm the person looking to get something named after somebody, I don't know that we want them on the subcommittee to review it.
Well, we may or may not. I mean,
Okay.
I think, it all comes down to making your case.
Okay.
And I think that's the rationale behind forming this committee and, making sure that this is, it's appropriate to the circumstances.
Okay.
So-
And the other thing is we typically try not to vote the first time we're reading it.
Okay,
mean,
we want to bring it up at the next meeting, we can do that if you
I'm
like.
just double checking. I
you know,
mean, as
ju-
you said, it's similar to our regular naming which was when I
Right.
was reading it, I'm like, I've read this before.
You've read it
Yep.
But-
before, so normally I would agree, but since this is really the same document with
Just
the
public
names
safety.
changed,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
you know.
that's fine. Thank you.
Yep, Brandy.
I just have a quick question. So where you go through the methods, and the third method is through a purchase of something like a tree or a brick.
Yep.
And there would be a donation to the Ashland Emergency Fund, which I think is great. And then a little bit further down, we talk about the naming principles, and it says the select board may approve a gift to the town of Ashland. So so it sounds like there's two different situations that would happen, right? So if it was something like a tree or a brick, it would go through the Ashland Emergency Fund, and if it was something like a naming of a room or a donation, it would come to the
Yeah,
town.
two apples and oranges, I think, in terms of, we haven't gone, so a lot of municipal buildings, I'll use, I think the Krista McAuliffe Library in Framingham. When you enter, there are bricks that people buy. And so that amount, whatever that cost is, I'm suggesting in our policy that it go towards, if we go that, now, we may or may not do that. I don't believe there's gonna be brick walkway, but that's just an example of what could be, that the policy would accommodate, that sort of thing. So there really hasn't been any, at this point, there's nothing that has been established in any way.
Right.
We haven't had any requests. We haven't really gotten to the point of looking at some of those opportunities with trees or that kind of thing.
Okay.
But, I think it's pretty broad and covers a lot of different eventualities.
Okay.
The name of the building itself is going to be Ashland Public Safety Building, unless, of course, a large corporation like Gillette decides to give us, 4 or 5. No longer a company.
Can I ask a question before we?
Go ahead, Rob.
Yes, Steve, in the opening paragraph, in terms of the number of, I just want to make sure I understand how many people are on this committee. You talk about the chiefs, and one member of the Ashland community is designated by the select board. In the event there are more than 3 individuals interested, is that referring to the 3 people above?
It says a minimum of 3 people, but it's going to include the 2 chiefs. And let's say there's only 3 people involved, the third would be a member of the community, but it's a minimum of 3, but it's going to include the 2 chiefs.
Right, so we could, I presume there would be more. So are you saying that we could appoint more than one person from the select board? And up to 3 or even more than 3?
Sure, sure, yeah, I would.
Okay, so this could be, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say, we could have 5, 6, 7,
Okay.
odd number, but yeah, again, it would be a minimum of 3. And as far as
Overall.
members of the community, I would suggest any interested parties. And I would think we certainly would want to have individuals that may have, a better knowledge of Ashland history as part of it. So maybe the Historical Society or the commission might be participants as well.
So this is very flexible in terms of what we, or the select board would do in terms of naming.
That's, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
So do we want to adopt this, or do you want to hold off?
I move that we accept
Thank you.
the updated naming policy for the public safety building and its spaces as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor? Hand raise.
Aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0. That passes and approves, so thank you, everybody. And Steve, thank you for getting all that work done. We appreciate that. That is great. Okay. Vote on the general fund and enterprise fund budgets. And with that, I will turn this over to our town manager, Mr. Herbert. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we provided you with a lot of information, including Brittany's analysis on the water, or all of the enterprise funds, and also her recommendation. Let me, what we can do if you want to is we can go through the budget vote summary and go through those, and if you have any questions, we can answer them as they come up, or we could just open it up to questions, and if you have a question on a specific line item, we could go to that. I'm going to suggest that we actually do the former. Of course I would, so.
And which budget pages are you using?
So the one,
General fund overview or the detail like we would look at the town meeting?
the budget summary vote all funds, so this one, Yolanda, this one, this is budget summary vote.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a process question?
Go ahead, Rob.
So are we voting on any rate increases as part of this presentation? Is that implicit in this approval, or is that a separate process?
That would be a separate vote, Rob,
Okay.
and I certainly
So
understand.
this is a general endorsement of the budget. Okay,
Well, it's a specific vote on the general fund.
yeah.
Okay. So before we start out, I'll just give you a broad overview of where we started. It should be more towards the front.
Okay, I'll find it. Go ahead. Don't wait on me.
So,
Actually, before we start, is it possible to get this up on the screen for people to see? Can Susan, if Susan has access to the whatever she sent us, she should be able to open it and share her screen? That way the public sort of is looking at what we're looking at?
Or maybe Brittany has it.
Or Brittany?
Susan, are you able to pull that up? Or,
I do have it up, but I don't know how to upload it from here.
Just so if you share your screen and then Paul can focus spotlight on you, or if Brittany can share her screen and we can spotlight on you, one of the two.
Brittany, why don't you try to do that and then pull up the budget summary vote all funds?
Okay.
Okay. Do you have access to, or do you have permissions to share your screen?
No, I just need to be made a host, I believe.
Okay.
Whoever's controlling can make her a co-host. Yep.
So as Brittany's putting out, just so we
Yep.
don't have some dead air space here, one of the things that we talked about when we started this budget process this year is talked about right-sizing our staff for the amount of work and the projects that we're doing. Of course, anytime you're looking at adding staff, that can be a tall order, especially with some of the restrictions that we have with, going up on our budget and what we have for revenue sources. I am pleased to say that this year we have been able to add a couple of different positions, including a capital projects position, which was already budgeted, but is further budgeted in 2023. Also, a financial analyst type person in the town accountant finance director's department, an engineer in DPW, and also a deputy chief in the fire department for half a year, which will obviously continue on to will be absorbed. The full year will be absorbed in the next budget. So again, this is an optimistic budget. I think it's safe to say. Really want to thank Brittany for all the work that she's done with this. Also Jen, especially with the budget and capital items. So with that being said, Brittany, if you have it up there, looks like you do. Perfect. We'll start off with we'll just go through line by line. Is that okay?
Can she zoom in at all, or?
Yeah, Britt, could you?
There we go.
Is that good, Yolanda? Can you see that?
I would go
Do you
back.
not have this sheet?
I have it.
Oh,
But
okay.
If we're looking and talking about numbers, I would.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you had it.
We don't have what we have in front of us.
Okay.
I would go
Is this big enough, or do you want me to make it?
I would
want
go
me
to
zoom
I would go
in?
to the next one in. Percent
Next one in,
changes and
okay.
isn't as important, but
Let's do 150.
there we go.
Yeah, that's good.
How's that?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So I'll go through this, and then I'll go through the big jumps and percentages. I'll explain those, so we don't have to go through every single one. The town manager budget is, percentage change is 4.56% or $25,000. Central purchasing, that goes up 17,200 or 31.1%. The reason we're doing that is that there have been some line items in central purchasing that we were able to shift off to CARES funds, coronavirus relief funds. So we're in previous years, and so we're bringing that back on. Telecommunications budget, there's no change there. Town council, we're reducing by $30,000 or almost 12%. We don't have as much litigation going on, so we felt safe reducing that. Data processing goes down almost 1%. Town clerk budget goes up 6%. The elections town meeting budget goes up 83.72%. This is driven primarily by the fact that we have a gubernatorial election, both the primary and the general, and we do anticipate that mail-in voting and early voting will be a part of that process. So that's what's driving those increases. The Board of Registrars goes up almost 30%, even though it's a small dollar amount item. That's an increase in census forms and postage we'll be sending out, so that's why you see an increase there. Human Resources goes up 9%. We're looking at potentially proposing two HR generalist positions or converting two positions from that are currently in the office to HR generalist positions as opposed to specialized positions. So this contains rate or salary adjustments for those individuals, and some more in the expenses line item are being increased.
So we're increasing our HR department to 3?
No, it'll still be the same number of people. We'd be looking at changing the positions from what they currently are, which is a payroll coordinator and a benefits coordinator, to HR generalist positions.
And then we have a manager. So we have a manager and then two people under
Correct.
her? Okay.
So that would stay. Overall, the administration section of the budget increases 3.39%. The town accountant budget increases 47.51%. That's driven primarily by the new position that I referred to earlier. The assessor's office increases 2.1%. The treasurer's office increases 8.74%. That's driven by a couple of different things, mainly an increase in legal fees for tax title, because we've got a number of properties that are in tax title now. So just to assure everybody, that does not necessarily mean that we're taking properties. It just means that we have the ability to go secure those funds through the tax title process, or back funds through tax title. Overall, the finance department goes up 16.55%. Under development services, with the Conservation Commission, that goes up 8.54%. That is driven primarily for treatment costs related to Lake Washaycom. If you remember, we talked about that a couple of years ago. We had talked about potentially taking that out of the stormwater funds. Turns out that that's not the most appropriate place to take it from, number one. Number two, that requires a partnership with Framingham, which it's been a little bit difficult to get that solidified. So this year we've been able to do that, and so that's why you see that increase there.
So you're saying we've been able to partner with Framingham now?
Yes.
Since January? Or before?
Since January.
Okay.
So, Open Space Committee stays at no change there. Planning Board.
So just,
Yep.
sorry. Why does Open Space Committee have their own line item? Why are they not under, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but
Yolanda, I'm going to use this answer, which I hate to use.
it's been done that way.
It's always been done that way.
Okay.
And some things
Okay.
are just better left unchanged.
Okay.
I think. Planning Board going up 7.36%. That is driven primarily by a salary adjustment for our assistant planner, and also paying someone to help do minutes. One of the things that we're seeing generally, we might want to take a look at this globally, is that we have a lot more board and committee meetings now. And so just taking minutes has, with the existing staff has become a little bit more difficult. So we're looking at enlisting the help of the person who continues to do a lot of our minutes, Linda Kane, to help with that. Inspectional services. It's actually going down almost 32%. If you recall, we're actually creating a revolving fund for that and moving the salaries over to that. So overall, that in development services, that budget goes down 10.3%. So moving into public safety, the police department budget goes up 1.72%. Fire department budget goes up 10.7%. This is driven by, again, the position for half a year for deputy chief, but the major driver of it is that we're absorbing $114,000 from the SAFER grant. We have to absorb more money from that.
That was part of the agreement, right?
That's part of the grant. So public safety overall increases 5.33%. The health department budget decreases 10.87%, and that, Brittany, do you want to try to explain this? I think you can probably do it better than I can. This has to do with the money that we had set aside with ARPA funds to handle some of any health-related increases that we had with Ed Berman leaving, like if we needed to have additional support. Do you need more of an explanation than that? Okay. So, Brittany, stand down. So, veteran services goes up 0.9%. That's primarily due to the assessment that we have. Public library increases 2.78%. So health and human services overall reduces by almost 0.5%. Public buildings and property maintenance, that goes up 4.14%. DPW administration, which is the second to last big one, goes up almost 38%. And that, again, is due primarily to that new position, that new engineer position that we have.
Michael, question?
Yes, ma'am.
So with hiring that engineer, are there then things that we've gone out to do that we won't have to go out to do anymore?
Yeah, we have.
Or potentially long-term savings by having our own engineer in hand?
Correct. We would see a reduction eventually in contracted services.
Great. Probably not this year as they get on board, but in future years?
In future years.
Okay. Thank you.
So the other, adjustment of almost 10% is with fuel, and I think we can all understand the reason behind that. So overall, the public works budget increases 5%. Okay, moving on to education. The school department budget increases 4.83%. If you haven't, I would encourage you to look at Jim's summary budget that he provided, I think, not too long ago. So there are a few positions that he has added through that process, through their budget process, so this fully supports that. I should probably talk a little bit about positions in general when we get to the end of this, but so that is the school department, Ashland School Department budget. The Keefe Tech Vocational School budget actually goes down almost 15% based on the assessment that we received from Keefe Tech. So education overall goes up 4.14%. So getting down to debt service, excluded debt increases almost 18.5%, and that's because we'll be bringing more of the Mendez School on to excluded debt as that project evolves and continues to be under construction. Non-excluded debt goes up almost 6%. That's driven by what the debt schedule is, so very little that we can do about that. And debt overall goes up 11.33%. I do want to say that still overall, we still have a very manageable debt profile
sorry, other question.
Yeah.
Can we, obviously not tonight, is there a way to see what is covered by the excluded debt and the non-excluded debt? I mean.
You mean
can we
the
get a-
different items?
Yeah.
Yes.
It'd
we
be sort of
usually-
good to see what feeds into these two items would be good to have.
Okay, we do include that as part of the budget document. So there should be a section related to, specifically to debt
In
that
the
would have all that
town meeting
information.
documents or in the,
The budget document.
Okay.
The big thick book.
the big thick book, okay. Which is that's probably not up online yet, the whole thing.
No, I think we'd want to see the votes on both
Okay,
the enterprise funds and the general fund before
Before
we
it
go
goes
into
up.
production of
Okay.
that. Capital projects, the amount budgeted stays the same. Going to employee retirement, our assessment increased 6.43%. Unemployment compensation actually went down. This is because as we've emerged out of COVID, we don't have as many people that were on unemployment. That's primarily by the schools. And then another thing is that we also found that we had a number of fraudulent claims, which we got money back for. So that
there was a lot of fraud
yes.
during the whole pandemic. Our company got hit by some too, so.
Oh, so I think a lot of people.
Personally, like, my name was submitted for unemployment.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. So benefits and insurance goes up a total of 5.92%. And then the salary contingency, I should have pointed out that all the departmental budgets include contractual increases for all four unions, even though one is still being bargained right now. But this is for non-union employees, and that's budgeted at 2%. So that's why you see such a decrease in that line, because we don't have the union increases in there. And the reserve fund stays at 0. So if you have no more questions, what I would do is I would ask the board to vote on the total general fund budget of $71,677,750.
I just,
I think Rob has a
Question?
I think
question.
Rob's got a question.
sure. And I think this is kind of a general question. You know, what we've been comparing the 22 passed budget to the 23 proposed budget. So I just wanted to ask Brittany or Michael, I mean, are there are you foreseeing in the last couple months of the fiscal year any big changes to the FY22 budget totals that we're looking here as kind of a baseline? I mean, any big issues or problems or things we should?
Yeah, Brittany, I'll let you answer that. Got a lot more visibility in the detail.
As far as staying on budget, I don't foresee any issues in the FY22 budget. We're on track. I think with some of the vacancies that we have, we'll have savings at year end. So as of right now, we're still on track. If anything, we're under budget.
Sure, which is, I think what.
Our expenditure
seems to-
budget, we're under budget.
Yeah, which is kind of typical, right, for us,
Right.
or for really a lot of budgets. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So as a follow-up to that, maybe at our next meeting, we could get a review of where we are specifically for the fiscal year 22.
Fiscal
So,
year.
you know, we can show residents, okay, this is what we're spending and this
And
is
this is
why
where
we're
we're at the
going into
total
the.
budget-wise.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's always helpful.
Yep.
Okay, you want us to take a vote now?
If
Is there anything
you're
you
so
wanna-
inclined.
Sure. I move that we.
Excuse me
oh,
one
sorry.
second, one quick question.
Oh.
So Finance Committee you had this week, and certainly they approved this as presented?
No, we've reviewed it. They won't vote on it until they make the recommendations for the warrant.
Okay,
So, which is supposed to be at the meeting next week.
good,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 23 budget, $71,677,750 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Rob, you have a question?
No, I was going to second
Okay.
it, but Brittany beat me, so.
Okay. All those in favor?
I mean, Brandy, sorry.
Aye.
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 That's 5-0. So our budget has been approved.
I have one other question for the budget, doesn't affect what we just voted. Where in the budget do we find the CARE funds and the ARPA funds that we still have that we haven't used yet?
I think we've used them all, right, Brittany?
We haven't
We've
used
utilized all of the CARES funding.
all the CARES
Yeah,
funds,
the
okay.
CARES funds.
CARES funding has all been utilized.
Okay. ARPA funds, those haven't all been used?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
So are those in here anywhere, or they're separate and they're tracked separately?
They're separate and they're tracked separately.
So could we see what we got for CARES and where it was spent, and what we have for ARPA and what's budgeted and what we've used already?
We could do that. I'm not sure if we've spent anything on the ARPA end yet,
Okay.
but definitely we can.
Again, it would
we
be
can
good
do
to,
it for
you know,
both.
we got a good amount of CARES money. I think it would be good to show the public
How it was
where,
utilized.
how it was utilized.
Yeah.
I think we can do that relatively easily.
So in looking at the paperwork that we have in front of us, I was a little confused, but now I see it. It says 23 proposed budget, and it shows 83,585. But yet the budget that we actually voted on was 71,677, 750.
Yeah, so the 83 includes the enterprise funds.
Enterprise funds, got it, okay.
Which we're carving out and doing separate.
Separately, right, okay.
Are we doing those tonight, or are we gonna wait on the enterprise?
I think we should review it tonight.
Okay.
If you're so inclined to vote tonight, I'm not going to argue against it, but usually you don't vote on things the first time you
Right.
see them.
Right.
So,
Right. Okay. But, so you want
want
to
to
talk about that now? Yeah, let's do it right now. We're in that mindset, so let's do it right now.
So let's start off with water and sewer. Brittany, just want to go briefly through your memo?
Yeah, I'll just try and get the memo on the screen again.
Know what,
So just to begin, you know, I obviously would have liked to get this to the select board a little bit sooner than I did. Because obviously it's a little bit later than I would like. But as such, this memo is for water and sewer only. And it takes into consideration prior years' usage reports that are looked at from calendar year 21. Retained earnings, inflation rates currently, the 5-year capital plan that was submitted by our DPW director, and then also the 5-year forecast for both water and sewer, which is also in the packet that was provided. So I'll just go through this at more of a higher level. So for the water enterprise fund, the last time that a rate increase was voted on was back in 2017, and that was for the FY18 budget year. So we'd be going into our 5th year without a rate increase. With that said, we've been able to not have a rate increase for a number of reasons. Notably, the service departments brought in a lot of revenue for the water enterprise fund. We had reasonable inflation rates over the last couple of years at about 3%. And then we also had a declining debt service budget that contributed to us not having to recommend a rate increase over the last 4 years. As shown in the table right in front of us, the development that I thought would be the best to analyze in order to compare to future potential developments of the town was the Cirrus Apartments. And that was analyzed and then compared to future developments to see what kind of revenue those developments could potentially bring in to the enterprise funds. So obviously the water, on the bills themselves, the water portion is about 20%. The sewer portion takes a much larger percentage. So the water revenue isn't as high as sewer as far as total revenue collected. So the driver in the future years for the Water Enterprise Fund are the water mains, the water main projects that are on the future years, starting in FY24. And also the repainting of the Woodridge tank and the inspection and repainting of the Cedar Street tank at 1.5 million. So these projects amount to about $10 million. So in future years, these are the projects that are really driving what I'm projecting to be a potential deficit in those years. And those future years include projected revenue from all of the developments, the 5 developments listed here. That forecast includes the projected revenue from all of these developments. So it's showing the need for a rate increase in future years, and then also for now. So if you read the memo, you'll read that I estimated what the average unit would bring in for water, for sewer, and then I came to a total revenue for water from all the developments, which amounted to 146. I applied that amount to future forecasts to come up with the forecast anyway of the enterprise fund. The request for a 10% rate increase, that is really for this year alone, and then also to help offset increases in the future for the water main replacements. The 10% rate increase this year would generate approximately $200,000 in revenue. It would cost taxpayers $5.70 a quarter, or $22.80 a year. So that rate increase, the $200,000, would allow the town DPW department to essentially carry out all of the capital needs that they have in FY23, which is listed on, page 6, which is to replace the water treatment plant filters, some minor water mains, water meters, scatter upgrades, a minor inspector and repair Cedar Street tank, a truck purchase, water plant modernization, and furnish and install a security fence at the water treatment plant. So that increase would allow us to do all of the capital needs for this year, and also set aside some funding for next year. So I just want to point out that we have utilized retained earnings in the past for the town's capital needs. It's my hope that we will protect the retained earnings and use a hybrid model in the future to help offset the debt service of the water mains in the future, because that will impact this fund a great deal. So that is the request for the Water Enterprise Fund. If anyone has any questions on that.
Brittany, I do have one question, and I know
Yes.
a lot of this is based on, some of these figures are based on potential developments coming online. What
Right.
happens if some of these do not come online? And one is in litigation right now, and we have no idea how long that litigation is going to take between the property owner and the developer.
Right.
Though we have commitments,
So-
but how does that
Yeah.
affect, what we're looking at and what we want to do?
So what I've seen, just looking at the forecast, so I had to obviously just make a decision. And my decision was to be optimistic, and I included all of the developments into the FY24 and subsequent years. And even including on the water side, even including all of the developments into the forecast, we're still showing a deficit. So if the revenue from a potential development didn't come through, or doesn't come through until 5 years from now, it will just put the fund in a further deficit for that year.
Okay. All right. But that would also affect the rates that we will be paying. So how?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So as it stands, the future developments for the water enterprise fund, since the water portion of the bill just doesn't take up that much of the bill, it's only 20% or so. So even with all the developments factored into the forecast, it still doesn't cover the needs of the water enterprise fund, and those needs would be the capital needs of the fund.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from other board members?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, Brittany, just a couple questions. So if, so actually providing more water to, if all these projects come online does not increase our costs. It's cost neutral to provide. It's really just a revenue side of things.
I'm not actually sure how it would impact the expense side of it, except maybe on the sewer side, potentially the assessment, Framingham assessment.
Oh, I see. Yeah, and you're going to talk about the sewer rates next. Is that right?
Yes. So I believe the developments would more so impact the sewer side.
Okay.
Of things
And just my other question: what's the role of the retained earnings fund? And you said I think it's at 1.8 million for at least is that the water. And how do we use that? I mean, isn't that something we would use for capital projects, or? It seems to be saying, I think you're telling us there's a lot of capital projects and you want to raise the rate to fund those capital projects, but can't capital projects be more of a long-term revenue, be expensed over a longer term?
So the capital projects that are in the pay-as-you-go, I guess you could say that the cash funded, these are shorter term projects. They're less expensive. The ones that are recommended for debt service are longer term. They're much more expensive. They're in the millions of dollars. It's not something we can possibly fund in the budget itself with rate increases alone. There is
so that list, so that list you gave us is kind of the more shorter, smaller capital projects that you want to fund more on a pay-as-you-go operation.
Right. So the forecast will show the capital needs in the future, and just in the forecast alone, it shows about $8 million in needs for the water main replacement in the future. The repainting of water tanks is a few million. So that is in the near future. And that is what I would recommend utilizing retained earnings for, along with a rate increase as well at that time. Whether or not it's chosen to do 75% a rate increase or 25% retained earnings or some hybrid model, it's the bigger capital projects that I personally would recommend utilizing retained earnings for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Steve, you had a question?
Yep. So this is probably both for Britt and or for Michael about, just how we manage rate increases in general. 10% is a pretty healthy bite of an increase, and realizing that we haven't raised rates in 5 years. Is there a better model out there for managing increases in rates? Should we be taking small bites of the apple rather than, a big chunk, and the likelihood of rates needing to be increased relative to the either the coming online or not coming online of future developments is going to have an impact here as well. So, your thoughts on what may be best or better practices regarding increases?
Brittany and I debate / argue this basically every year. So I generally am a proponent of smaller increases each year as opposed to one big rate increase. The argument that Brittany makes, and I ultimately agree with her, is that why tax and fee people on money that you're not going to necessarily use at the time. So we would just be building up retained earnings and retained earnings over and over again. You know, if we use the model that I talk about.
But it, if you don't mind, follow-up question, but it sounds like we need to increase our retained earnings to do some of these major projects. I mean, I'm looking at the new debt that we're gonna have, and Brittany's recommending that we use retained earnings to pay that debt and to do those projects.
And we have healthy, you know, a healthy amount of retained earnings. I mean, it has, except for a couple anomalies when we have actually used it to subsidize rates before, which I think was back in 2019, 2020. Our retained earnings has stayed around that 1.8 average amount. And that is something that we have talked about, and I think Brittany explained it tonight, when we're starting to look at these capital projects. You know, we are looking at a blend of, you know, doing a rate increase and also utilizing the retained earnings. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I would just, I guess, follow up on what was presented tonight, which seems to indicate that we may be needing an additional rate increases in '24 and subsequent years after that. So although I agree, I would be more in Brittany's camp here, you know, why rate increase, you know, residents if you don't have to at this point in time. But it seems like we're heading into a point in the next 5-year forecast where we are going to. So I would think we'd want to come up with some kind of mechanism to make it a little bit more palatable year by year.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, especially, I mean, we're talking about some ambitious capital projects here. And so I think the years of going 4 or 5 years without a rate increase are probably over for a while. But yes, I think we would be looking at smaller increases each year after this, you know, to be to the point.
Okay, thanks.
I do have one question, and it's not actually budget related, but it's with the projects that you folks are thinking about doing. And most of them have to do with the water replacement of the piping. I hope it's not going to be in the downtown area, because we just...
Yeah, we already
hopefully it's
did
steamed
the,
down.
we
It's
already
been
relined
done,
the
right?
pipe in downtown.
So that's done, okay. So we're looking at other areas of town that need replacement.
Yeah, Fountain Street, Waverly Street, I think are the two big ones that would be coming up.
Okay. Now, did we do Main Street Hill? Is that something that we're looking at? Because I know we've had several breaks up in that area when we worked on piping down.
I don't have my full list here.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. I'm just curious. Thank you. Thank you.
So,
I just have
Go
one
ahead,
question.
Brandy.
So thank you, Brittany, for presenting this. It's a lot of information. I know nobody wants to have a 10% rate increase, because I agree with Steve. It's kind of a big percentage. And I was curious. So if we wouldn't approve a 10% rate increase, the other option would be not to be able to do these projects, correct? And the repercussions from that could potentially cost the town more money in the future, correct?
Yes, mainly in operating costs, because as you have more water main breaks, they usually happen at the worst time. They don't happen during business hours. So we have to call people in on overtime. Causes much more of a disruption for people in their quality of life. Sometimes it takes a while to track a break down. I remember not too long ago on 126, it took quite a while to find to find a water main break. I think David Iarusi used some kind of divining rod to find it. But yes, Brandy, short answer is we would see an increase in operating costs, yes.
okay. Thank you. Joe?
Go ahead, Brandy. I mean, Yolanda, I'm sorry.
So, Michael, you were talking about, you know, that we have a plan as to what our replacement plan is for water pipes and things and mains and stuff like that. Does that then tie into our road work plan for the next 5 years as well, to make sure that they're working together, that maybe we do the water and then we do the road? I mean,
It
And is
would.
that something that, again, might not be for the next meeting or before town meeting, but at some point, I think would be good to, again, get an idea of what that plan is and how it relates to roads as well.
It would. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want to mill an overlay or do a full-depth reconstruction of a road and then just
And then go in
redid
and,
it.
yeah.
I think Olive Street, we're looking at doing Olive Street needs to be paved, but I think it's, on the schedule, ideally, we would like to do it around 2026, 2027. Obviously, we would hold off on doing any kind of full road reconstruction there.
Until after we've done the
that's
work
done.
for the water main. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so it might be good to get an update on that. Thank you.
Just one quick question with the cost of capital being $700,000. Is that going to come out of the retained earnings account? Or are we looking to subsidize that with the increase in water fees?
That would be with the increase, just the operating budget, correct, Brittany?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I'm just kind of curious as to if we have 1.8 available, why we couldn't utilize that for the cost of capital and maybe reduce the 10% fee to 5% and just to soften the blow to the residents in town, and then maybe look at it in a year or two down the road to increase it another 5, just to break it up a bit instead of one big pucker shot. Just a thought.
Eric, a question just occurred to me.
Go ahead, Rob.
In terms of the capital projects, what about the role of the ARPA funds, which were, as I recall, some of them were targeted for water and sewer infrastructure, and also the infrastructure funding. Are we using some of that for our capital needs here? It doesn't. I haven't. How does all that play into this?
Well, not the ARPA funds. The board voted on a schedule and projects to use the ARPA funds on. We haven't seen any infrastructure funds, Rob, yet. That's
but hopefully we will, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
So maybe there's some room for maybe optimism there. I mean, that's the whole purpose to help projects like this, right? I mean, unless we're looking at using it for other things instead.
No, I think this would, my understanding is that with the infrastructure funds, you're probably going to see them divvied up at the state level into things like road reconstruction, bridges, water sewer infrastructure. So we'll probably have access to restricted pots of money at the state level that's being funded through the federal infrastructure dollars.
So I guess I would, in terms of if we're going to do rate increases or thinking about implementation, I would think we'd want to at least make sure that we're, what we're getting out of that and putting that into this before we make, choices to increase the fees, or at least take that into account as we think about how much we need to increase fees. And maybe we should take another look at the ARPA list in light of these needs.
Michael, just to clarify, the budget summary, that includes the 10%, all the increases that are recommended are included in the
Correct.
summary sheet.
Correct.
Okay. So is this something, I know that this is the first time that we've had the opportunity to look at it. I know Yolanda brought up the point that we usually don't take action or vote on something the first time that we have the opportunity to look at it. Is this something we want to vote on at our next meeting? Or is this something that we need to take action immediately because it affects the budget type of deal?
No, we can wait until the next meeting.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking out loud, and Rob made a point about with some of these other fundings coming. I still get leery, and I know it's been almost 5 years that we've raised our rates in water, and gratefully we've been lucky in many ways that we haven't had a total collapse of our system. But you're right. The longer we wait, the more it's going to be to repair. I don't know if it's going to be cost effective.
Correct.
To wait. So we're damned if you do and damned if you don't type of deal. So I get it.
And we probably won't hear anything from the state as far as the infrastructure funds until way after we approve the budget for this FY '23, so,
That would not surprise me.
yeah. Okay.
So if we were to raise, if we come back at our next meeting and we vote and we raise this, and we raise the rates to 10%, and within the next 8 to 9 months, the state provides us with additional funding, or we know what types of monies we're gonna be getting that will be utilized in this specific area for water and or sewer, is there something we could look at to maybe lower the rates?
That's always a possibility, yes.
Okay. I just, again, we've got a lot of projects going on, and I just want to make sure that that people understand that, granted, 5 years have gone by, we haven't raised the rates, and we've been very fortunate that way, but I guess we're at that point where we have to a degree.
We are, and I mean, so the impact on the water, so to the ratepayers is $22, and on the average ratepayer is $22.80. And while I think a lot of people could probably easily absorb that, there's a lot of people, I think, who that makes a difference. A significant
Is that
difference.
quarterly or is that yearly?
Annually.
Okay.
And we're going to hear about the sewer rates too as well, so.
Right. Okay. All right. If we're ready to go to sewer right now?
Yeah, so Steve, I just wanted to point out, so the budget summary did include the rate increases, but in the memo, it does include the different scenarios for different proposed budgets. So just to get that out. So moving on to sewer. So I followed the same method in reviewing the sewer enterprise fund. I looked at prior developments to try and analyze future developments, looked at inflation rates, operating costs, the debt service budget. And again, this was all made possible of not requesting a rate increase over the last 3 years due to the declining debt service, reasonable inflation rates around 3%, the stairs apartments, and other factors. So looking at the new developments, the sewer portion of the bill obviously takes up a little bit more of the bill, around 80%. So any revenue generated from the new developments will impact the sewer enterprise fund more significantly, and that's shown on the new development analysis. So I analyzed 2021. So the total revenue generated by the Cirrus apartments in 2021 was $463. The amount that was generated, so this should say sewer, in sewer usage was about $362,000. So I applied this math to the Cirrus apartments. So the Cirrus apartments generated about $361,000 sewer revenue, which is about $908 per unit, and then apply that to all of the potential developments, and the total amount generated for all the future developments is $568,000. And then I applied that $568,000 to FY24 and beyond. And of course, as Joe said, these are just estimates and assumptions. Some of these developments might not go through and so forth. So that's on the new developments. On the Framingham assessment, to answer your question, Rob, on the new developments, I think this is where we'll see the impact is on the Framingham assessment. So what I reviewed was back to 2016, prior to when the Cirrus apartments came online, and then looked at the change year to year. There's no set change, really no trend that's really apparent. What I did see, or what I can try to look at and come to a conclusion, is that it did increase by about 7% each year. And I attribute that to the new developments. If I look at the new developments that come on, it's about 1.5 times the size of the stairs departments. So that would make for an 11% increase in FY23 and beyond. For the MWRA assessment, we're looking at a preliminary assessment of 6.1% for FY23. Final assessments won't be out until June. And just a note actually about the Framingham assessment, I haven't yet received a preliminary assessment from Framingham. Typically I receive it a few months ago and I have yet to receive it. So I'm not really sure if that's good news or not, but that is a little concerning. So for the sewer enterprise fund, in the past, we've been able to get away with not maximizing our revenues or pushing our revenues to the max. So we've seen a lot of addition to our retained earnings, like in the past year. We've been able to add quite a bit. And that was because I was able to set revenues at, I believe it was, 5.3 million. And our revenues came in at 5.7 or 5.8 million. In FY23, I'm budgeting revenues now to the max. So with the expenses set, the revenue set, I'm showing about a surplus of about $2,000, I believe. So that's where the increase comes in, is it gives a little bit of breathing room for the fund and for the enterprise fund to continue to generate, retained earnings, just in case, we have any hiccups along the way. Maybe the assessment might come in a little bit higher than what I anticipated, especially since the preliminary hasn't been received yet. And I don't want to necessarily erode the retained earnings of the sewer enterprise fund, because those retained earnings are a little bit more sensitive than probably any other fund that we have. So I am recommending a 2% increase, which corresponds to a $4.42 a quarter increase, or $17.68 a year. So the recommended budget would be $6,119,034. Again, the budget itself doesn't change with the rate increase, but it gives the enterprise fund a little bit more breathing room, as I'm only projecting a $2,000 surplus, and that's with myself, projecting revenues now to the max, and expenses, where they are. So I'll take any questions if there are any.
So,
Mr. Chair? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, Brittany, so it sounds like, in comparison to the water enterprise fund, this is really basically helping to bridge the increases that we're seeing from both Framingham and the MWRA. And so if the enterprise fund would go into deficit, what would happen?
If it went into a deficit, it would take away from the retained earnings of the fund. So say we ended up having a revenue deficit. So I am projecting that the fund takes in, let me just look at my sheet. I'm just gonna say 6 million for the year. That's what I'm budgeting, is 6 million for the year. If revenues come in at, say, 5.9 million, then we would eat away at our retained earnings for 100,000 on the revenue side.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Rob, you had a question?
Yes, just operationally, Brittany, what our options here, if we vote to increase it, it would be effective July 1st, and the first collections would take place in the first quarter in October. Is that, and if that's how it works, do we have options like maybe delaying the rate increase to a certain quarter in the next fiscal year, or how could that work?
You can make the rate increase effective whenever you'd like it to be.
Okay.
So if you voted for it to be effective July 1st.
And I think that's what this is based on. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be July 1st. So bills go out in August. So the reads would be done the read dates would be June 1st to June 30th.
Oh, okay.
So there's kind of like a delay when the readings are done, what months it covers, and so forth. But it would give residents at least a 3 months heads up as to when rates would be effective.
Yeah, and so, but that's effective. So they'd start paying more probably in September and October. That's basically
Right. So the bill that goes out in August is
Okay.
not due until September.
And so one of the things we could potentially delay rate increases, or, those are have some of the options we have, especially if we're waiting for more information, just food for thought. The other thought I'm having in terms of this is that people, as we all know, are being hit with a lot of price increases across the board. And, we're in very unique times right now. We're basically fighting a war. And that war is going to be costing us money, which is, I think a price that, many of us should be willing to pay. But, I can't speak for, but that's what the American public is facing, I think, over the next few months, inflation and across the board rise in costs. So, it just suggests that we think about that as we approach these issues. Maybe if there's something we can do to ameliorate that kind of situation, maybe that's something we should consider taking on, even if it's not. I think this is a very sound forecast, but maybe we should think about running a bit of a underfunding risk, as it were, in light of the kind of unique times we're in. But just something that occurred to me as we approached it. So thank you.
As a follow-up, could we I would think that you'd be able to plug in, if we started July 1st, what it would look like, if we started October 1st, what it would look like, and if we started at January 1st, what would that look like in regards to our funding and our,
How it affects down the
right,
road.
how it affects our budgets and our retained earnings if we start it at different quarters. Maybe do that exercise.
Can do that.
One other thing I'm just looking at, Brittany, under your Framingham assessment, when you look at fiscal years and you look at 2021, the percent change went up almost 27%. And I know you said you haven't gotten the latest assessment from Framingham yet. So I assume that your numbers are pretty conservative and not projecting something quite like a 27% increase for this next year. So theoretically,
I'm hoping I'm conservative. I'm hoping that I'm being conservative.
so there is a possibility that if we
Yeah.
do put off a rate increase and we get hit with a larger assessment, we could end up being kind of behind the eight ball in a bad situation.
Not entirely. I mean, we could still bring in 3 quarters worth of revenue and not 4 quarters. The SOAR Enterprise Fund can certainly hold off if the board would like to wait until final assessments come in for the MWRA and especially the Framingham assessment.
It would be good to have.
If we do see a huge increase, then I would ask probably for a larger rate increase. If we saw something like a 27% increase.
So in relationship to that, I have 2 questions. One, if you look at the history you gave us about the Framingham assessments, there's, in 2018, it went down, and in 2020, it went down?
So they have a look back period.
Okay.
So I think they're like a year behind.
Oh, okay.
So they try to give us the most up-to-date information that they can. But if we have apartments or complexes that are fully online, that information and data isn't captured until the subsequent year. So we saw a decrease one year, and then we saw a massive increase the next year. So there's a delay. There's a timing delay here when it comes to the assessment, because they can only give us the information or the assessment based upon the data they have from the previous year.
Oh, okay. So it's not like a quarterly where they tell us how much we've utilized for sewer.
No, they bill us quarterly, but as far as the assessment is concerned, they base the assessment on the previous calendar year.
Okay. And then my second question is, are we doing any sewer through MWRA? Well, she's saying MWRA assessment, and it's talking about water and sewer rate revenue. Are we doing any sewage directly through MWRA?
Well, they do the treatment of
For
the sewage.
Framingham?
They do the treatment for us, too.
We pay for the piping of our.
Yeah, when we're paying Framingham, we're paying just for the privilege of using their pipes to get it
Right.
to Deer Island, essentially, to where it's going to be treated.
Okay.
So,
it was covered by
with
our
respect to that,
Framingham
and I don't, Brandy, I'm looking at these figures and I'm trying to gather how these figures would be affected by COVID over 20 and 21. The fact that a lot of people stayed home and did work out of their homes. There were more people at home doing work. There was more water usage, there was more sewer usage. And if Framingham looks back at, would these assessments possibly be greater than what we currently have in front of us? And is there a possibility that in 2023, where a lot of people are going back to work and utilizing their offices out of town, that those figures may be a lot lower because people aren't home working out of their house 5 days a week, maybe 2 or 3 days a week? So how do we make those assessments? I know it's difficult, but they have to affect the water and sewer flow in some capacity.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we would have the ability to get into that level of detail.
Okay.
Of analysis. I'm just trying to think of how we would do that. Brittany, do you have any thoughts?
I apologize. What was the question?
Well, now that more people are going back to work, so like into the office as opposed to working at home, is there any way we can factor that into our analysis? Because that would change usage.
I honestly would have no idea how to factor that in.
Okay.
No, and I'm just saying that there's a possibility that could actually affect our rates in some way.
Interesting.
So if people are
That's
home.
a tough one to figure out, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think you said there's a year look back, right? So it takes a year before things get factored into the assessment, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So it would be another year before we would see any of that.
See any of that?
Yeah.
Right.
And I would assume the reason we haven't got our Framingham assessment letter is because of the change in administration.
Yeah, they've lost some staff there.
Exactly.
So maybe if we don't mention it, they might forget.
That's, you know what,
It's
Rob?
called wishful thinking.
Yep.
You know,
It's worth a shot.
it is.
Send them a thank you letter for the gift.
Then they'll remember to send it.
2 years down the road. All right, so
want that.
we'll do the same. Again, Brittany, thank you for all your effort in getting these figures to us. It's mind-boggling at best when you first read over it. I looked at it several times over the weekend, and I think I gave birth to an accountant at some point because the figures are just incredible. So thank you for doing all this work. And again, we don't need to take action on this tonight. We could review it again at our next meeting and come up with some decisions and.
Yeah, why don't we give you a couple of different scenarios
Okay.
to play with and think about?
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. So are we good with that right now? Rob, are you okay with that? I don't see you on the screen.
Yes, all set.
Okay. All right, good. All right. No, thank you very much for the presentation. Definitely a lot of work put into it, so we greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think we want to do the others.
Yep, we can do that.
Brittany, do you want to go into your last memo?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me find it. I don't think this is it. so this is the memo and the budget request just for the remainder of our enterprise funds. Trash, fields, cable, and stormwater. The trash enterprise fund, I am recommending a budget of $1,666,972, which is an increase of $216,000 or about 15%. So at this time, with contract negotiations going on with the vendor, I'm recommending that $500,000 be utilized in retained earnings to balance the FY23 budget. So after the completion of a new contract and review of the rate structure can be looked at just to balance the budget in time for town meeting. I'm recommending using the $500,000 to just balance the budget for now. So that's trash, if anyone has any questions. If not, I'll move on to the Fields Enterprise Fund. So our Fields Enterprise Fund, I'm recommending a budget of almost $100,000. It's a decrease of $76,000 from the prior year. So last year, we had utilized, it was a subsidy from the general fund to balance the budget. And we owed that money back to the general fund last year. And then just due to the fact that the Fields budget or fund is not generating the revenue that it used to in the past, pre-EEE, pre-COVID, we've looked at further reducing the budget in order to find some savings. So that's why you see that decrease. To balance the budget, I'm recommending utilizing $50,000 in retained earnings. I have spoken to DPW and they do have $40,000 that we're hoping to generate in the upcoming months from future rentals that they have on the books right now. But since we don't know how the next couple of months are going to go, I'm not going to rely on it. If the fiscal year plays out differently, then I can certainly, we won't utilize the retained earnings. I'll boost up the rental revenue when doing the recap at the end of the year. But just to be safe, I'm recommending $50,000 be utilized or raised in rental fees, and then $50,000 from retained earnings. Are there any questions with the Fields Enterprise Fund?
I have one. I mean, I know that when we put the turf field in at the high school and the turf field in at the middle school, we paid for that and we're still paying for it, but there was the plan to do rentals. And I know that some of the rental issues that we've had is, as you've mentioned, EEE, COVID, other towns around us now having multiple fields as well. Are we doing anything, or is there anything in place to try to attract outside groups to come in and use our fields on weekends during the summer? Are we doing anything actively there to try and increase revenue with these fields?
I mean, our marketing is basically through word of mouth. So we do have some pretty large tournaments that come in, especially soccer. I think we have pulled in a couple of them over the last couple of years due to the fact that we've provided good service to other clubs that have wanted to use it. But we don't have like an active marketing budget.
Question here. So I think the more concerning issue is, besides generating revenue, is the field replacement. And, I think, as I recall, there's something like a 10-year lifespan for a typical turf field, or at least these turf fields. I think we're working on, what year, 11 or 12 at this point, maybe?
There's a few years difference between the middle school and the high school.
So, but we're bumping up against that, so, I guess we need to start thinking of a plan as to how we're going to, theoretically, when this all started, it was going to be a self-paying process. Clearly, for a lot of reasons, that hasn't worked out, so.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why we proposed with the ARPA funds, putting $1 million towards the fields. Now, since that time we've talked about if Mendez has has an overrun that we can't manage, maybe we could repurpose some of the ARPA funds that were dedicated to the turf field for that, but hopefully we won't have to use it. And hopefully, we'll have that money available to use for the fields. I don't think it's going to pay for everything, but it should put a pretty big dent into whatever the replacement cost is going to be.
I think, Michael, to go back to that, my recollection is we had raised some issues about using $1 million of the ARPA funds for the turf fields. And I thought there was going to be some discussion, one with the schools about their responsibility for that. And also from my point of view, if we do have a revenue stream that may be coming back, I think it's, maybe we could put aside, I would suggest we put aside some portion of annual revenues to fund or to go towards these capital needs of replacing the fields. I'm not at all enthusiastic about using $1 million in ARPA funds for turf field replacement. And I would like to see, especially when we're now asking the ratepayers to pay more water and sewer funds because we're not, to pay for capital funds there. I think that's a more important use than these than turf fields for ARPA funds, frankly.
No, I understand your point, Rob, and I think one of the good things about kind of the ARPA plan that we had was that those turf fields were actually the last things to be funded. I mean, we basically extended the deadline that you had to spend ARPA funds. I think it's 2026. Basically, it was at the very end. So certainly, if things come back, or if there are other sources of revenue, and I know the schools would be contributing to this too. I do remember explicitly us talking about how the fact it wasn't all on us to do this, and they're agreeable to that. That maybe we won't have to use it for this. And there's other sources too that we could utilize, like CPA funds, but I think the idea of putting in annual revenues, I mean, it'd be great if we could put annual revenues aside for savings for future capital expenses, but right now we're barely being able to support our operating budget with it.
Okay, I mean, I just think that it's preferable to fund these fields on a different basis than ARPA funds and have the people, I was there last week and it's full of people playing soccer. So presumably this revenue is going to start increasing again. And I think the people who use these fields are the ones that should be, at least on a short term, on an as you go basis, funding these kind of capital needs and operational needs.
Yeah, I think we missed the boat.
Rob, I'll just say, even prior to COVID, the field enterprise fund was not generating the amount of rental income I think that anyone thought it would to be able to support a field replacement and the debt service that would be associated with it.
Yeah, and there were a lot of factors, like Steve said earlier, that were main cause to the funding not being readily available, or monies that were coming in, or potential monies were coming in. No pointing fingers, but the ball was dropped. A lot of groups that were using the fields were not called back to see if they were going to use them again. So there were a bunch of factors that came into play with respect to that.
Well, hopefully we can improve that situation.
Well, I hope so, Rob. I really true hope so, because, again, like you said, I drove by there a couple of weekends ago, and the field was lit. They had a great soccer tournament going on. It was tournament. It was packed. It was packed. So, it's beneficial for the school and everything. If they're selling, refreshments and things of that nature, that's helping the groups as well. So, let's not forget that, and let's continue working on something that's going to be beneficial all the way around. So. But if the fields need to be maintained, they need to be maintained, because I would hate like heck to see anybody get hurt because the fields were not properly maintained. That's not acceptable. So, okay. Thank you. Again, Brittany, thank you for all the long hours and hard work in factoring those figures. We greatly appreciate it. So, any other questions or comments with respect to that? No? We're good? All right, so we're moving right along.
Thank you all for going
Yeah.
through all of that. Thanks, Brittany.
Yep. We're still old and new business, and unless I missed something, we're down at that point in time to discuss term limits for boards and committee members. Town warrant, oh, yeah, oh, I did skip that. Maybe I skipped that on purpose.
Maybe you did.
Maybe I did. All right. Sir, go right ahead with the town warrant discussion.
So I think you were provided at a very late hour a revised warrant, just to go through that and just to summarize the revision. We've taken the inclusionary bylaw one off, and we've replaced it with the sustainability committee framework for net zero, which we've talked about before in the past. We've talked about whether or not to have a town meeting vote for a net zero plan. I think that is, ultimately we came to the consensus that maybe more of a framework, guidelines, guideposts would be much more appropriate for town meeting. But we'll get to that when we get to that number of articles. So the first one is town reports. The second article is transfer from our general stabilization fund. Again, that's going to be to help our operating fund budget. This will be the last year that I'm going to propose that we actually do that.
And that's the 450,000.
The 450K. Article 3 would be the fiscal year 2023 budget. Article 4 would be the capital authorization. Article 5 would be a transfer from OPEB trust. Article 6 would be to increase the economic development budget. Article 7 is the annual consent article. Article 8 is the annual consent article for the Community Preservation Fund. And then we get to Article 9, which is sponsored by the Historical Commission. And it's to amend the demolition delay bylaw for historical or architecturally significant properties, which is very similar to Article 10, which is also to update Chapter 125 demo delay bylaw for historically or architecturally significant buildings, and that was put forward by citizens petition.
So is there any actual difference between the two of them? No. Are they just dealing with different
You want to speak? Yeah.
different laws?
So the historical, I think I'm talking now. So I think the Historical Commission initially had a notice of intent just to increase the year from 1940 to 50 years prior. While they were reviewing that bylaw, a citizen's petition came in. So we sent that citizen's petition to the commission just to let them know that that was going to appear on the warrant. They met on last week to discuss it. They decided to adopt the language, just sort of given the time. So adopt the language within the citizen's petition. Given the time, we weren't able to have the citizen's petition withdrawn because you need to get all the signatures that you received to put it on to also withdraw that. And so they only had 3 or 4 days to try to collect those signatures, and so that didn't happen. Although there were members there were residents on the meeting who said that they would support removing, obviously if it's the same article, but they thought, having it sponsored by a committee or commission in town holds a little bit more weight than a citizen's petition, so they had that conversation at that meeting, but
So
the
one
timing
of them
just
will be withdrawn at town meeting?
Yes, I
Okay.
hope,
That's
yes.
the
That's the
intent
hope.
anyway.
Yeah, that's,
That's the hope.
Well, if they're the same thing, then
Yeah, I couldn't find any difference.
Yeah.
Right, that's why I
You know, the
thought
only-
it was an error.
The only difference is that,
Copied it twice.
we highlighted the changes in the one sponsored. When we receive a citizen's petition, I basically have to take the language that we're
Sure.
given and just cut and copy it in, so we're not able to do that sort of highlighting and bolding that happens which we're just trying to help people see what the changes are.
And the one that was adopted has been reviewed by town council to make sure that it's
Meets the
usable
full
and
corners,
workable
right.
for historic demolition bylaw?
Well, it has been reviewed, but I believe there were some issues that did come
Yeah.
up about that.
Yeah, so there are.
And are those then being reviewed before this goes before town meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm hoping that the Historical Commission will have a meeting. There is some concerns, not necessarily about the change in the years or so the article basically changes from 1940 to 50 years or older, and that would go from 9 months to a year initially, and then if it's over 100 years, it would be initial 24-month or up to 24 months.
Wow. So from going from 9 months to 24.
If you're over 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question about
It's concerning.
the 50 years, because if somebody put a demolition delay in today, 50 years prior is 1961, okay? Now, I would say, I'm not sure how many houses in Ashland that are circa 1961
Isn't it
are
71?
historically or
50.
architecturally significant. So how do we, the language is a little, it speaks at the beginning strictly to the, historically and architecturally significant, but kind of in that piece there, it seems to be missing, So I was telling Michael earlier, our first house in Ashland, there's nothing architecturally or historically significant about it. So now I know that the commission would not have to put a delay on it, but it seems like there should be a little bit more clarity there.
Yeah, it's very, very vague and it's very, very subjective. There are no guidelines here, within the Warrant article, or which I should say within the bylaw, that talk about what makes something historically and architecturally significant. So yeah, there is a vagueness there that really leaves up a lot to interpretation.
Is that on purpose, the vagueness?
I think this is similar to the previous language that was in there,
Yeah, they
the
didn't make
existing
any-
language.
Yeah, there was no
Yeah.
changes to that language.
Because you're basing historical value based on someone's potential view.
Well, this might be an opportunity to fix some of that,
Right.
rather than just change a little bit of the language.
Because what someone may think is historical, others may not think it's historical.
Well, again, I think there's value to this, to the bylaw, without question.
Yeah, no, I'm-
In the right applications, but I'm not sure if this really, I think, defines that very well.
Yeah, and there was some debate about that at the Historical Commission meeting, just in terms of as we move, decades on, and it's always rolling.
Sure.
So at some point, homes that were built in the 80s will be deemed could be potentially deemed historical. And so they had some conversation about whether, is that the right indicator? Ultimately, they decided to sort of move forward with that rather than having a sort of set date of 1940 or maybe moving that up a decade or something and doing that to kind of every maybe 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
reviewing a sort of constant date. But there was definitely some discussion about as we get closer, as we move along, it will continue to move along. And
Thank you.
So will this be ready, and will the legal synopsis by town council be ready for the May meeting? Or is this something that we should entertain holding off until the fall? So we're not rushing through it.
The citizen petition, we have to take up,
You have-
right?
you
Because
have
it's
to
on
put
the-
on.
Have to put
Because
on,
it's on the
okay.
because they got the signatures, we have to
Okay.
review it unless we, at town meeting, people decide, okay, there's too many questions or there's too many issues, so let's hold off voting on it.
You can
Which-
also amend.
Right, you can also amend on town meeting floor.
That's fine, I know we
That
can
always
amend it at
gets
town meeting, I'm
confusing to
just,
people, but, yeah.
I would like to make sure
But we
that-
also have the historical commission's presentation, right?
That's the one we're talking about,
We're
Rob, is the
right.
historical commission, because it would seem that the citizens petition is redundant. So one would be pulled, which I would think the citizens petition would be the one to be pulled. I don't, I'm
At
not.
town meeting.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that, I'm just saying that that's,
Yeah.
to me, makes the most sense.
Yeah, so just to focus on the one presented by the Historic Commission, I don't know, do we have time to have them come in and talk to us about this? Presumably they support it and had reasons for 50 years or whatever language they put in. And I don't know, is there time to refine and change wording on this if we vote to keep it on the warrant?
Well, in theory, they
They're
should
doing
do
it at their
a
meeting.
public forum. They should do a public forum on something
Yeah.
like this, where they're making a substantial change to the bylaw. So, how
Yeah,
to...
so for example, just to go on your, 50 years, which my math says 1971, right? Not 61, but that's, maybe it should be 60 years. I don't know, 75. I mean, that's the kind of discussion I'd like to have with them and how they came to pick 50, for example.
Yeah, I'm trying to take,
That's just an example.
trying to take a couple decades off my age.
There you go.
Yeah, and I would agree with Steve that I would think that the Historical Commission will have their meeting where people can give their input and they can, we can sit in and listen on that.
And I would
Okay,
think
I
they
mean,
would
if-
give a presentation at town meeting, like to
Right.
be able
They
to
would
go
present.
through what,
Yeah.
what they were thinking for each individual
Yeah.
changes that they were
And I
making.
guess I was just trying to head off and refine some of those issues before we get to town meeting, I guess, and do a process
But
that
one
we
of their
might.
meetings then.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to be able to make any changes to the wording of this
No,
once we
not to
close
the
the
warrant at
warrant,
this point.
so.
Oh, we can't? I thought we could.
Not
that-
on
am
the
I-
floor of town meeting, we could.
Sure, you can make an
No,
amendment.
no, I'm
yeah.
talking about
You
right
can
now,
amend it.
before we approve this. Or move the warrant forward. Don't we have the right to approve or not approve or make changes to warrant articles?
Yeah, I think we can choose not to support it,
I think you,
and you can also not put it on the warrant as well.
correct.
Right.
But I don't know, I personally would not advocate for that. I
Same
think
here.
this is a valid discussion to have. I think it needs refinement.
Okay.
And, I certainly agree if there's an opportunity to kind of work some of this language, refine it, would be a good thing. I don't know if there's enough time, but
Well, that's what I was alluding to, is that, there may not be enough time, and I don't want to rush it through
Yeah.
and have issues come down the road. That's why hopefully town council can come up with some suggestions if there's some issues that she sees and present it to the historical commission prior to, and to the citizens group that also supported this. So you kill two birds with one stone, and everybody's working off the same page and the same article instead of presenting two separate articles, and it's actually just one.
Yeah.
So,
I just hate making a lot of wording changes at town meeting. It's just very cumbersome and, anyway.
yeah.
Okay,
And I
thanks.
don't disagree with that, Rob.
So, but you're looking, Michael, for us to vote and close the town meeting warrant based on what we discussed tonight?
To close and post
To
it
close
based on
and
what we
post, yes.
discussed.
Okay.
Okay.
I move that we vote to close.
Hold on a second.
Oh, sorry.
You actually had one more.
There's one more.
Oh, the sustainability
We
one,
got Ash
sorry.
here waiting to talk to us, I think.
So,
Sorry.
I'm just
Article
listening.
11.
and again, that's just to adopt the strategic framework that I believe the Sustainability
Okay.
Committee had actually
Okay.
presented to the board a couple
That's
of
what we
meetings
signed
Okay.
off on, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is the one that we,
Right, the one we signed off on. That went
Okay.
to the letter to the state.
yeah.
No,
Well, no, this
different.
is
Oh, that
not
was
the letter
different.
to the
That's
state.
right.
This
That's right.
is what
This
they're
is
looking for us to do.
their plan that Ash had come to us with, sort of like the framework that he had presented about net
follow
zero. So
through
it's
on
not
it.
like it's not detailed, it's more kind of big picture.
We're
Yeah.
gonna do.
And they're doing their forum on April 13th about it.
Yes.
It was this
Yep.
probably jogs everybody, but
Yep. Yep.
everybody's memory.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
You're good.
Yes, ma'am.
You're good.
I move, sorry, that we close and post the town meeting warrant for the May 4th, 2020 town meeting.
Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Well, that's
Aye.
5-0.
And I actually have the signature page, so before
Okay,
everybody
we can
leaves,
sign
we'll
that.
have to.
Yeah, before we go. So Rob, you're not here, so when you have a chance, if you can swing down to pick that up, that would be, to sign it, that would be awesome.
Okay, sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you. All right. Discuss term limits for the board and committee members and how the board would like to handle the reappointments. This has been brought up several times. We've had brief discussions on people having concerns about the same people on the same committees, though there may be new people that would like to get on the committees, there's no vacancies. So I'll open it up for discussion amongst all of us. Go ahead, Steve.
So we have talked about this. I think, I'm not sure if we did this at a retreat at least once, maybe twice. We've talked about it, I'm going to say at least half a dozen times. I think, from my perspective, the goal is to increase the opportunities for residents to participate in boards and committees. I've used the word rubber stamping in the past, and I have to say that I believe we're guilty of that in many cases. And I think I think the rationale for managing appointments and appointments to our boards and committees that we appoint is valid. And I think there's a number of tools or a number of ways that other communities have done this, and some communities do include term limits, and it's done in a variety of ways. So that's one option. Another option is to, interview people or interview committees, get feedback from committees on a very regular basis. Historically, we've done a pretty poor job of that as well. I'm more inclined at this point to advocate for the concept of term limits for boards and committees. Just an example of a board and committee statewide is the cultural councils around the state. Under the Mass Cultural Council, you can only serve 2 consecutive terms, and then you have to get off for a year. So you think about 6 years of service. I mean, that's pretty significant. And, I think we have to, maybe get away from the mindset that these are not lifetime appointments. And again, sometimes we use the excuse that we're not getting enough talent bank forms and we're not getting enough resident interest. But to me, it seems like that's increasing. And I think if we were to take the next step and advocate for the fact that we want to increase resident participation, and we're willing to go to the extent of creating term limits, I think, it may take a little while, but I think we'd see much more active involvement. So that's kind of my thoughts on this. And again, I mean, it was great to listen to Mr. Campbell tonight talk about his interest in the Sustainability Committee. And, I think second goal is to bring people or appoint people to boards and committees that are the best qualified for that board or committee. And clearly, he was very, exceptionally qualified for that. And, so I think we want to also make that a goal as we modify the way we do this.
That's good, Yolanda.
So, yes, Steve, we've talked about this for many years as we've been sitting, for myself as I've been sitting here, and as I've been speaking with other communities how they do it, and I think I've mentioned this before, is that not only do you require people who want to be newly appointed to a committee, you ask people who are up for reappointment to sort of reapply to a board or committee, because then you can look at everyone who's looking to be on that committee and you sort of have all the information in front of you. Why does someone want to be reappointed to a committee if they've been on it for a while? And then you can say, okay, I have this person who's been on for many years, but I have this new person who might bring something new. So I think part of talking about term limits is also then saying if you want to be reappointed to a committee, you have to reapply, just like for elected positions, right? If you want to be reelected, you have to reapply to be elected. I think we can use that same rationale for our appointing committees.
So I would add to that, because I agree. I think that we should post up on our website, just like we do for elections, all the boards that are going to have, open positions as of, the summer, way in advance, so people have an opportunity to see what boards and commissions they could potentially even apply for. Because I think part of it is we don't put it out there until it's, until somebody is definitely not going to be reappointed. I think it's a good idea to put everything out there, to have not only the person that wants to reapply for the position, send in something, you know, to make their case, but I think that the boards and commissions need to also come up with a proposal, you know, to say, okay, you know, this person has served X amount of years. We have 3 new candidates that could potentially come in, and, you know, be able to weigh that. I think, you know, to Steve's point, and to your point too, it's like we're trying to get new people to engage, and I think there has been a lot of new people that have become involved, but I think we definitely need to make it more apparent what people could get involved in. Because I think by the time we show the openings, it's almost too late.
I would just, and I agree with, you know, with what Yolanda said, actually, and you know, I guess, you know, we've talked about this so much and for such a long period of time. I think we should, in my mind, we're ready to take a step. We need to take a step, and maybe that step is, the first step is to have, when appointments expire, that everybody applies, everybody comes in front of the board and discusses why they want to be on the board, and we do it on that basis. And maybe that we should establish that tonight, and then and see how that transition occurs, because we've seen how many times have we gotten emails we've been copied by Susan on talent bank forms where she says to the applicant, sorry, you know, thank you for your interest, but there's no openings on that committee at this point in time. So we see quite a few of those.
So the other thing that I know some communities do, and I know, Rob, you probably want to chime in, what some other communities do is they have a subcommittee of their select board. So right now, a lot of it falls on Susan, and we review the talent bank forms, and certainly as we get new people. But I would almost recommend that there be a subcommittee of the select board that work a little more closely with Susan, so that we have a better understanding of what appointments are up, how many people are running, and the subcommittee might have to do a little of at least the review before the people come in. I just think it's a lot, just to review it, only because I think right now a lot of it falls on Susan, and I think we could get a little more involved as select board members.
Well, I think having a talent bank database, and I'm not sure if we have one, or not. I mean, we get copies of all the talent bank forms. You know, Susan is the point of contact for our office, so, you know, I appreciate certainly the way that she manages that. But I really think it's important that folks come before the entire board and have a discussion.
I'm not saying that shouldn't happen, that they shouldn't come before the board.
Why a subcommittee then? What would that purpose of the subcommittee?
The idea for me behind the subcommittee would be that they would be working with Susan to understand what positions are open and what talent banks have come in, just to help manage it. And as you said, is there a talent bank database? Could we somehow, and I don't know if this is, and I should know if there is, do our talent bank forms get put up on Google Docs under specific committees, right? So a talent bank form comes in for a sustainability committee, and up in Google Docs that we have access to, any talent bank forms for sustainability committee can get put there, or for whatever committee.
Yeah. Well, I would suggest, let's give some thought to the subcommittee concept.
Okay.
But I would advocate that we adopt a application for all openings as they become available for boards and committees that we appoint.
And advertise that in advance.
Yeah.
Right,
Can I just,
Rob
Go ahead, Rob.
Mr. Chair, can I just, so I do want to, I don't know, maybe push back a little bit of some of the concepts here, although I mean, there's a lot of good concepts here, but just one thing, we do have a lot of dedicated committee members who, every year we like to say, great job, thank you. But now we're talking about ways of either saying we have somebody new that, so you should leave, or you should have to reapply and talk to us again about why you want to be on this committee. And there's more work, administrative work on that. if we go that route. So that's, I would say, Yolanda's idea about a subcommittee, I think working with Susan would be necessary. But also, I think that, at least how I'm experiencing it, I don't see a lot of new people that aren't able to get involved. And maybe I'm missing someone, but take, for example, Mr. Campbell that we appointed tonight. I mean, there was an opening in sustainability, and these openings happen fairly regularly. But, or for example, are we going to say to Ash, well, it's time for you to leave, or Matt Marquis, just to name names on sustainability, it's time for you guys to get off so we can get somebody new in. And I'm not sure, how much we really want or need to do that. I mean, if we really had a lot of people, and maybe Susan can tell us that, a lot of people that are getting discouraged and not getting involved because there's no openings. But I haven't been experiencing that. I've been experiencing the opposite, where we're trying to get people involved, and we're happily many times successful, but it's not like it's overwhelming. And, I think it is, we do kind of reappoint people en masse in August, and maybe we should look at that process to go to your guys' point about being a little more thoughtful about it. But I would just think we should be careful about, discourage or not being appreciative, I think, of the people who've spent years doing things, and how much of a need we really need to have to push them off of committees. I guess that's my kind of general take on that. But
I would just say I agree with you, Rob. I think that there's a lot of folks who have given a lot of time and effort and have a lot of institutional knowledge about the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
I would think it would be a thoughtful process in conjunction with the committee to be able to make a decision of what's the best balance to strike, because I do think that we do need to make sure that we do bring in new people. So I think that there's room for both.
Right, I would agree. I don't think we're trying to say to anybody, we don't want you anymore kind of thing. I think we just want to, as Brandy said, be a little more thoughtful and ensure that people understand it's an open process, that just because you've been sitting there for a long time doesn't mean you're going to get to continue to do that. Because I think what happens is people don't apply or don't submit talent bank forms because they aren't hearing about openings, right? They're not hearing about openings on different committees, so these same people are going to continue to be appointed, so I'm not even going to submit a talent bank form. Whereas I think if we make the current members who want to be reappointed apply, and then we let people know that it's an open process, I think we could get more people, and we balance that, right? We balance people who have been doing it with potential new members, and it's a discussion rather than just an automatic appointment.
I'd just like to piggyback what you just said. Well, what all of you have said is that a lot of folks have been on many committees for a number of years, and their expertise, we don't want to lose that. No. That's a key. Yeah. But you want to have a blend of new and those. It's no different than a baseball team. You want the veterans and you want the rookies playing together, and that you want them to solidify. You want them to work together. Yeah. No different than a committee. You want them all to work together for the purpose of a common goal, which is to better the town of Ashland.
Well, the other thing is, as you've seen with a volunteer committee that you're on, Ashland Day, right? They're not getting new members because probably different reasons, but as with many of our committees, as we look at some of our members, we want to bring new blood in. We want to bring some younger people in so that there's the opportunity to pass down that knowledge that the longtime members have to new-time members, so that there's a flow and it's not just ends because all of a sudden we've lost a number of longtime members and all of a sudden it's all new members. So it's finding that balance.
The other thing, Rob, is what we talked about right at the beginning. I mean, we are looking to, and I stated as one of our goals, is to appoint the best qualified residents to that board and committee. Now, it could be very likely that an incumbent on a board and committee is in fact the best qualified and should stay on there. So I don't think, we're looking to, just just rotate people for the purposes of rotation. I think, you know, that should be a component of our analysis as we appoint.
And I don't disagree with that. And everyone has made valid points about what the process should be. One, it should be fair, it should be equitable, but at the same token, I mean, each committee should be coming in front of us, you know, when it comes time for reappointment. And I know that in the past, because there hasn't been an interest or a lack of interest of many committees, Susan has taken it upon herself, and we're grateful for her doing that, to contact these folks and say, do you want to come back? Do you want to stay on the committee? In most cases, they do. I think what we should do is take that step away from her and bring them in front of us and say, okay, you sent out a talent bank form, you're willing to continue on, get everybody in, you know, specific nights for different groups, and work it that way. So it's going to be a lot more work for the select board to get things done, but that's the nature of the beast. So it's another night out of the house. I'm sure my wife would be happy.
All right, you nailed it right there.
I did. I did, Rob, just like you. But you know, but I think it's time that we definitely look at it and come up with some ideas. We're policymakers. So.
Sorry. And Susan let us know that there is a folder with talent bank forms online that we can access.
Yep.
So.
And if I may, I would just encourage you to, instead of thinking about it as maybe kicking people off or bringing on new blood, think about, like you said, assembling the right team. And to that end, yes, I do think we should publicize what those vacancies are going to, or when those terms are expiring, and try to generate interest. But if you think of it as building a team, which I've got some experience with, to that end, if you know people that would be good in different positions or on different committees, go out and recruit them,
right,
and ask them to be a part of it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they would necessarily be selected, but you know, that's how you build good teams, is you identify the strengths and weaknesses. You want that blend, like you've talked about, old and new, people who have certain skills, certain knowledge base, and you want to, again, create the best mixture that you can.
And I think for some people there is that sense of, okay, I've put my name out there and then I don't get selected. That's always a hard thing.
Yep.
But I think we have to encourage people to say, okay, if we don't know about you, if we don't know about your expertise for that team, we can't appoint you anyway. So at least give us the opportunity to review it. And I think at some point, maybe it's not maybe if we have 10 people for a couple of slots, maybe we can whittle that down to 3 or 4. So it's not all 10 people having to come before us. I think that might be where a subcommittee would help out. If, when we get to that many people applying for slots.
That would be great if we got 10 people that come to all the time.
So are we going to make a decision tonight about our plan, because it's April? And if we don't kind of come up with a plan now, we won't be able to implement it for August, because, so if we say we are all comfortable with posting all appointments that are going to become vacant this August, and asking the committees, basically telling them that anyone that is up for reappointment is going to have to reapply. Like, is that something that we're comfortable deciding on? Because I think if we don't, then we're kicking the can down the road again.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to kick the can down the road, but I don't want to rush the process either. So do we hold? Go ahead, Rob.
I have reservations. I mean, one thing to think about, for every position that you say is open, you're then potentially saying to a serving member, sorry, we're replacing you. And we have to be ready for that.
Well, that's
I think it's
or
one
we're
thing
saying, please just reapply so we can reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but you're also encouraging people, right? You have to encourage someone, say, oh, we've got these openings or potential openings and you can apply for it. And then we're going to say either to somebody who applied, sorry, we're going to keep the person who was there before
But
was
that's the
saying to
goal.
somebody.
That's our goal here, Rob, is to encourage
Yeah, I just think we have to be
greater,
ready for that. And
just
I don't
greater
see the big need for
participation
that,
among
so.
among residents. And you know, if you got to have a better way to encourage people, you know, by all means, bring it forward. But you know, I think at this point, I think that's a reasonable first step. And I mean, I would certainly be in favor of moving forward with that at this point.
I would also suggest that anybody that's interested in filling a position, I know you fill out a talent back form, you send it in to Susan. I would like to see the fact that when they fill out that talent bank form, that they have already attended several meetings prior to see if it's actually something that they want to get involved in. If they haven't attended any meetings and then all of a sudden we appoint them to a meeting and they realize that this is not what I anticipated, then we just defeated the whole purpose of going through this process. So
Well, I think Susan does that, right? When she gets a talent bank form in for any committee, she responds back whether there is a position or not open, and she recommends to them to go to a few meetings to find out if it's the right thing.
Well,
And that's happening actively right now, my understanding. Whether people are going or not,
well,
that I don't
that's
know.
it, right. I know she's asking, but we if they don't, then that should be a disqualifier.
Well, we normally get you know, if in fact they follow that process of going to meetings, we normally get a letter back from the chair of that committee.
Saying that they've been involved.
Making a recommendation,
Correct.
right?
Right,
That they've attended or not.
if they haven't.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Susan, correct me, but I think you indicate if there's an opening, they start attending and then the recommendation. So it's after they apply, right? Pretty much is when it happens.
That's correct. And in some cases, the committee member or the chair of the committee may come back and say, well, we don't have a spot right now, but we want to add them as another member. So we've done that on several committees as well.
So do we need a motion or
Do you want to do that now? Is that something we want to do now, or do you want to do it at our next meeting? I mean, this is going to be a policy that's within our purview to set policy, but this is the first real true discussion we've had.
or do we wait and maybe have something in writing for, I'm willing to write something up based on our conversation for our next meeting.
I like that idea, yeah.
Yeah, I think I
like that
support
idea.
that.
Willing to do that?
I am.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing, and
This-
like I said, I think there's other communities that I can pull
I'm
information
going to give
from.
you this here, because
Okay.
I've already done that.
Oh, okay.
This is what I used in the past.
Okay,
All right?
great, thank you.
Yep.
And
I have-
just a
I can also get it
related
from
thing, I
Leslie.
was, just a related question. I was talking to Susan. I have to get back to, because you recall for the Upper Charles Trail, we decided to give everybody terms, and I got to kind of go uncover that because they'll need to have terms for this ending, to be in effect this August, to be part of this process, I presume, right? So right now, they're still officially indefinite or something, right?
Yep,
We have to
appointed
try
for
to
life.
fix that. Yeah, appointed for life. So we have to try to fix, I would think, before August. But, ask somebody who wants to be up for renewal, besides me, that is.
Right. Because I think that's what it is, right, until the project's completed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to, I think, figure out how to officially change that.
Yeah, I get the sense we might hit net zero before we
Quite possibly. I will follow up with Susan.
Come on, in reality, that's possible, right? Because our net zero is 2040, right?
Yes.
And it's, it could take us 20 years. Come on, I've been saying that forever.
I'm glad I made you laugh, Ash.
That was a good one. That was good. All right, so we'll come back at our next meeting with some wording, and we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that's greatly appreciated. Next on our agenda is to discuss the status of the Valentine Restriction Subcommittee and discuss dissolving the subcommittee. And I will turn that over to the two committee members,
Okay.
Brandy and Steve.
All right, I will start, and Steve can chime in with whatever I miss. So Steve and I met yesterday to approve our last meeting minutes from January 26th. And that is sort of like the last thing that we had to do as a subcommittee. Our charge, as you know, was to draft CR for the Valentine estate, which we did work on, and we worked with town council on. And the next steps are really to refine that and send that to the state to get feedback, and also start working on getting a CR holder. But from our subcommittee perspective, we feel that we've sort of fulfilled the charge of that, and now it comes back to the select board to kind of manage the rest of that, to oversee the rest of that process. So I would recommend that the select board dissolve the subcommittee.
Right. So we completed our charge. We actually, our last meeting, the minutes of which we approved yesterday, was pretty active. We had a fair number of participants. It was a good conversation. And so at this point, I think it's really a matter, as Brandy said, to start to get this document reviewed by town council, by the state, and then brought back for more public discussion, and make sure that we are truly reflecting, what we want to see for this property reflected in that document.
So question in regards to the procedure, you're saying send it to the state and to Lisa for legal review and then bring it back to the residents. Wouldn't it make more sense to have the residents review it to make sure it has everything included?
Well, we've gone through that process for the most part. We've had a lot of resident, we had the Valentine Committee for over a year, reviewing
Okay.
the uses. We've had a number of discussions. We've had our subcommittee. We had a number of comments and public feedback there. So I think it's, I believe that we've captured, not necessarily in proper legalese, but we've captured what I think we've heard from lots of forums and venues over the past year and a half, 2 years. So I think, to move this document along, we need to get it into a legal form. And that's why we would have town council. The mechanism at the state level is they have a review process, and it goes back and forth.
Okay.
And then, again, I think we have scheduled a
May
I was
9th,
going to say,
right? We have
May
a
the
forum
9th,
scheduled
so-
for Monday, May 9th.
this will be part of that public forum as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
that is the plan,
Okay.
to talk about the restrictions.
I was just going to bring that up, but seeing that you did good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I would, again, agree with Brandy. I think we've done our job as a subcommittee, and has to be dissolved at this point.
Okay.
So I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we dissolve the Valentine Restriction Subcommittee with a thanks to Steve and Brandy for managing that and running that, and then moving forward with the process.
Is there a
I
second?
will second that. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That's a 5-0, and thank you all for the
Thank
work
you.
that you put into this. And thank you to many residents who came with their opinions and thoughts and ideas as part of this process as well. It did not go unheard, and we'll make sure that we continue doing what we need to do to make that property a beautiful place for all to enjoy. Okay. We're moving right along.
Okay, this is the fun part of Zoom.
Now, we've been asked to extend the BA grant application deadline. Right now, we have 13 applicants. And how long would we like to reserve?
I don't know.
So let me just kind of give a little bit of background. So there was just a miscommunication. It didn't go up on the website
Yep.
right after we approved it. So in order to give people more time to apply for the grant, the thought was to extend the submission deadline.
Till when?
So that is, I think it's up to us. If we want to award the grants at our next meeting, because I think initially that was the plan, because initially the application was due on the 2nd.
April.
Of April. So if we move it out
2 more weeks from
2
then?
more weeks, then we would probably push that out to like the first meeting in May.
Well, we only have 2 meetings in May, and one of them is town meeting.
Town meeting.
Yeah.
And the other one is then
May the
Mid-May.
18th.
May the 18th,
Yeah.
the day after the election,
Which
which
would
won't be
be
an issue
okay.
because we know
Yeah,
there'll be
which
no
would be
changes.
okay, the 18th. I think, we get a lot of kind of spring-oriented, the athletic teams and the garden
Yep.
club and so on. I think that would work.
So I just want to ask Sue, does that put extra burden on you, Sue? If we extend it to May 18th?
No.
No.
We'll
Make the decision.
appoint on May 18th, but I would say extend it to April.
April 29th.
April 29th? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Because the discussion was, those were the dates, so I wasn't sure if
Right.
you, okay.
Yeah.
So April 29th is when we'll continue the extension. Okay.
We'll get that out to people.
And
as
that'll
soon as
give Rob
possible.
and I, as a subcommittee, time to meet and argue.
Put together your spreadsheet, Steve. Yeah.
We still have 15 minutes. And that, next on our agenda is the consent agenda.
I move that we.
I'm sorry, did you guys vote? I missed that whole thing, so.
No, we didn't have to vote
didn't
on it.
vote
We
on
just
the
extended
Oh,
the
okay.
date.
All right, great, okay.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented on our agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'd like to thank Mark and Jennifer for their efforts on the Sustainability Committee and on the Historical Commission. So thank you both for all that you have done and will continue to do to make Ashland a better place. So thank you both. All right. All right, now. Priority projects update.
Yep.
Mr. Mr. Town Manager.
Mr. Auctioneer. I think he wants me to go through this super fast.
Yeah, we're going for an extension, Joe.
Yeah.
There's no way we're doing this in 9 minutes.
So with the Rail Transit District, I will try to keep it brief. I do have a meeting with the YMCA next week to get an update on what their plans are and what they're looking for.
There's a forum for some of us on this Friday morning.
So,
I'm sitting in on, I don't know if you're presenting as part of that.
No, the task force that I'm on is still in process right now, so that's probably a couple more meetings away before it starts to really come together, so.
okay. Downtown, I think everybody's starting to see hopefully a little bit more of the above ground work and hopefully getting a little bit excited about that. You see the mast arms being put up for the traffic signals. Should be seeing some of the light posts come up soon. A couple of things I do want to mention is that most of the material should be gone from Front Street that we're in front of the farmers market by the time the farmers market opens on June 13th, I believe. We did make a decision to reduce the sidewalk in front of the farmers market from 12 feet to 8 feet. And then we're just working right now on trying to get some information from the utilities again. So we've actually.
June 11th, to be official. It's June 11th, the first
Okay. June 11th on opening day.
Hopefully those 2 days
Don't make a huge difference? I hope not either.
We'll be rolling those tubes out of there.
I've actually asked Senator Spilka's office to get involved with some of the utilities just because we're continuing to wait for information and they're just not being forthcoming with it. So hopefully we'll see some results with that. I just want to give advance thanks to Karen for everything that she's helped with on this project. Public safety in Mendez School, I'll just start off with the Mendez School, and Jen, you can talk about the public safety building. So I went ahead and signed the guaranteed maximum price document. I've also signed the application to Eversource for electrical service, permanent electrical service to go there. They've been doing a lot of site work. I don't know if you've noticed or driven by there, but they've been doing a lot of the form work and the concrete work. And actually, at the end of the month, I believe they're going to start the seal erection. So we'll start seeing some actual shapes and forms of that building. So
I just see
it's
huge
exciting.
mounds of dirt all over the place.
Still a lot of dirt. Jen, you want to talk about public safety?
The public safety continues sort of along with still a substantial completion date of mid-July. They're starting to do a lot of interior work. On the third floor, they're actually doing painting, priming, tiling. They're sort of working their way down. The roof has really sort of started to take hold over the last week, and you'll see a lot of work there. And the large retention wall is almost complete in the back. The carport is almost done, and so it's really sort of starting to come together. I think they've really, you can actually see all the brick. The windows are in, so they're moving that along. We're also working with the committee and sort of some working groups within police and fire to finalize a furniture package, which will be exciting. Will be presented to the committee at our next meeting, which is Tuesday. Sort of the whole package. It's about $500,000 worth of furniture that will go throughout the building. It's really, I think, most of it that's happening.
And we're meeting
Tuesday.
Tuesday
We're meeting
here.
early this-
Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, we're meeting
Right.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
we're meeting
the
early.
elevator is also, I think, all the parts and
Oh, yes.
pieces of the
Available,
elevator
yeah.
is there, so that'll be
I'm
assembled
really intrigued
soon.
with this elevator.
I am. It's just that, it was never always fascinated with how they're constructed, and there's a ton of materials that are there, all in pieces. It's
Yep.
but yeah, it's really the retaining wall looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and,
really, really nice.
So it'll
Very
be
impressed with the work and the quality of work that's
Yeah.
being done, so. And we're definitely getting our bang for our buck, for sure. So thank you, Jen, for staying ahead of everything, and Bill Nagel as well, and Leo, that are on site, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Really don't have any update on the 126 project, except I'm hoping to get some more clarification from Northern Construction on the nights that they want to be working, and put that before the board for a vote.
It'd be good if we could vote that in April so they can start doing that work.
Get that ready.
Could I just interrupt one quick second? Because I don't want to continue. With the downtown project, is there any way, and I had a neighbor call, and they were very, very concerned. Sometimes the horses that are around those abutments where the new lighting facilities are going to go, the new light stands are going to go, sometimes they get moved or sometimes they get hit, and so they're not where they should be. So now you have that black berm at night, and you really can't see them. Is there any way they could spray some silver or orange?
Are you talking about the temporary
The
asphalt
temporary
berms?
asphalt berms? Because, if it avoids an accident or avoids damage to a motor vehicle, I think buying a couple of spray cans is a very cheap, yeah, seriously, effervescent type of,
Especially if it's a temporary berm, definitely
Right.
some glow-in-the-dark paint to just.
because those cones aren't really working.
Okay.
I've seen actually several school buses hit them, and I'm
Okay,
saying
well,
to myself,
the glow-in-the-dark won't help that.
no, no, you're right, it won't, but I'm just saying that.
Can't- Actually,
Right.
I have some fluorescent paint myself that I use to mark out some potholes, so I can just go over there and spray it myself.
Oh, is that
I'll
how we
help
do
you.
it? We take our own fluorescent paint
Yeah.
and fill the pot?
Gioso gave it to me, so they're like, here you go. But I do want to thank them. I think you probably, hopefully have noticed, hopefully most commuters have noticed, or drivers, that most of the potholes have been filled in
Yeah.
Yep,
downtown,
they-
so
yep, they
did a
are.
good job with that. But yeah, I'm sure we can add some type of, high visibility paint or
Yeah,
something to that
Thank you.
effect.
Before we moved on, that's all. Thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
With the Valentine project, so bids for the roof, taking off the roof and the sides, and So that would allow us to let it dry out, let us get some more visibility on what's actually salvageable and what's not. Those are due on 4/12, right?
Yes.
Yeah, April 12th. So we haven't had too much interest in that, so hopefully
Have
they'll show up
we
on
done
Tuesday.
any active reaching out to companies that do historical barn restorations, or can we only put out the bid and people who are interested can submit?
We can send it.
Yeah, we can send a link to people.
Could we, I mean, I know there's always people like, oh, well, I know this person, and I know that person. So I would say if you know someone, and then this is to the public, who does historical barn restorations that might be interested in helping us, tell them to look on the website and get the bid so that we have more options to choose from potentially.
Yeah.
We have sent it directly to different
Okay.
people who've had,
Okay,
interest in this.
And I'd
Okay.
also asked Robin Hicks just to send it out to the people that,
And
that
his-
he had previously got.
right. And Ed Hart, we've asked him, because I think he
Yeah,
knows
he's-
people too. Okay, thank you.
Regarding the soil remediation, the sampling is scheduled for April 18th. To do the actual remediation, we will need to go to Concom and submit a request for determination of applicability, and I believe that's April 29th.
Yeah, so we'll go initially to do an informal conversation. We're just right on the edge of the buffer. And so after talking with Becca today and Nobis, we thought maybe we'd go to Concom and then get some guidance on whether we'd actually have to do an RDA. It's only 12 inches, so sometimes they don't need it.
So just a reminder, April 18th is Marathon Day.
Mhm.
So hopefully you're doing your appointment with them later in the afternoon.
We'll make sure that it is.
Okay.
Which reminds me, they won't be working that day, right?
No, yeah, it's
Okay.
closed, yeah. And they actually will not be working the Saturday leading into that.
Okay.
You know,
Thanks
they've
for
been
the
doing
reminder.
smaller crews on Saturdays at the public
Yeah,
safety
public safety
building.
building.
They just don't want to be in the way for any
Right.
road cleanup that has to happen.
So with the Warrant District, we're actually going to have HKT do a peer review of CTA's construction drawings, seeing if we can find a way to get the costs maybe down a little bit. So that should help. And that's it for priority projects. Do you want me to segue right into?
You can segue right into it, but I'll accept the motion to go past 10 o'clock. A second? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. They won't be that long, but it'll be passed. Go ahead.
So I'll start in with town manager report. So first thing I want to talk about is an update on the police chief search. I want to thank both candidates who appeared here on Thursday night and did interviews, public interviews. I know it's a little bit nerve-wracking doing it in public. An interview in and of itself is nerve-wracking, but I thought both candidates presented themselves very, very well. Two very, very strong candidates. I applaud the the screening committee for what they put forward. I've heard nothing but good feedback about the candidates from the screening committee and also the process itself. I did take an opportunity to visit with a couple of the two candidates yesterday, have further conversations with them, and will be undergoing a background investigation. And we'll actually be conducting that before making any kind of offer.
And are you still accepting input from the public?
I
'Cause
have, today was the
originally
last.
Today was the deadline.
Today was the last day. I'm sure I will be getting feedback beyond today.
Okay.
That being said, I think it's important to note, I've received probably, say, about 50 emails regarding this, and I've had a lot of other people come and talk to me and speak to me. Even at Matarese today, somebody pulled me aside and, asked me what I planned on doing, and given me some feedback on what they thought. So,
Yeah, I've actually had people reach out to me as well. So,
yeah, yep. So,
okay, thank you.
yeah, I do appreciate everybody's patience. This is an important decision. Just to give you an update on the solid waste contract. Those of you that are familiar with our waste services right now, we utilize Waste Management. We did decide to go out to bid. We received 3 bids for rubbish services from Republic, from E.L. Harvey, and then also Waste Management. We've been working with two vendors, Harvey and Waste Management, to see what kind of price we can get beyond the bids that they presented. But I will say that every price that was submitted is significantly higher than what we're currently paying.
So are we going to have to look at increasing our waste fees and/or the bags? Or if we go with Harvey, do we continue with I mean, there's all kinds of questions as we look at this. So will that be something we look at for our next meeting, or?
Probably not for our next meeting.
Okay.
If you recall earlier tonight, when we talked about the Trash Enterprise Fund, Brittany recommended utilizing $500,000 in
Right.
retained earnings to help balance the budget. And so that should help carry us through this year, but we will need to look at revenue generation.
Okay.
Is there anything that other towns are doing that, you know, because I think we're in like this situation where we're trying to encourage residents to reduce waste by composting and recycling. But if we increase, you know, when you increase the fees across the board, then obviously it's kind of like it's a moot point trying to encourage better behavior. Is there any programs or anything that any of these companies have to be able to offset some of those kinds of programs, so we can continue to incentivize people to reduce the amount of trash that they're producing?
Well, our program itself incentivizes recycling simply because we have a consumption charge with the bag fees. And so the more trash you generate, the more you pay to help offset the cost. And when we look at a revised fee structure, that's something that we'll need to discuss. Are we going to look at putting it all on the fixed trash cost, or are we going to put it all on the bag cost, or are we going to do some kind of blend of the two? I did inquire about composting service, like curbside composting service, and that was prohibitively expensive. And I think there's a lot of interest in that. But I think the only community that is doing that is Cambridge, actually, for a section.
And that would be part of the waste management, because we have curbside
We do.
composting now that you can opt into.
Correct, but this would be through our hauler.
Oh, okay.
So
Maybe it's time to remind people about that program and tell them that, I mean, I know for myself, it has certainly decreased our use of the orange trash bags by having the compost program.
Right.
So hopefully we'll have a decision on a hauler by our next meeting. So I don't have much in terms of COVID update, except today we held our vaccination clinic, really not COVID related, but yeah, for all the kid vaccinations, and that was really, really successful. Many thanks to Raj and Jess, our new regional public health nurse, and her team. Also, Ed Berman stopped by today to help out a bit, so it was good to see him. And then I've got a couple of other items that aren't on the agenda, but first, we had our first update, or our first meeting for our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force this past Wednesday. We talked about a framework about how we're going to approach these and how we're going to attack them, if you will. There were 6 main points in the Suffolk REI report. We're going to address those. We're basically made the decision to parse out each of those 6 and address those on an ongoing basis. So we'll be having, we're looking at setting up standing meetings 2 times a month in the evening. So hopefully we'll get some work there. And again, our charge is to get something before the select board in 6 months. So I'm really trying to zoom along here.
You're doing good, don't
Okay. And then 3 other items. First, I just want to give you an update on Legacy Farms. Those of you that recall, we've talked about the stormwater issues there. Vin Gately, who is the developer over at Legacy Farms, as well as his consultant, his wetland consultant, Peter Bemis, they put together a plan to help mitigate some of the issues that are there and remediate some of the issues that are there. We had our engineer, our peer reviewer, look at that. That's Mike Carter through GCG. He had a number of suggestions on how to improve that. So we'll be going and talking to the developer about making those improvements. A little bit more concerning is that, there's been an enforcement order and a cease and desist stop work order, essentially, for the development until these issues are rectified, and they're going full steam ahead still. So we'll be looking at bringing before the board some litigation to maybe put upon an injunction to keep them from working. We'll also be asking the Concom to do something very similar.
Mike, I was going to ask, is it the enforcement order from the Concom or a different one?
The enforcement orders from the Conservation Commission, yes.
Oh, okay, so it's really,
Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
no, it's really in their court then, I would think, right? What's our role in that?
So the select board's role, there's two distinct areas here. So the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over the wetland areas and the resource areas. The select board has jurisdiction over our water supply and also any damages to town property that has happened.
Have we
So there
reached
could be
out?
two different orders, yeah, okay.
Are we working with Hopkinton and their conservation people and their, I mean, obviously cease and desist, the work is being done in Hopkinton. Can we ask them to put a cease and desist in place as well?
We have.
And they haven't done anything?
They did put one on and then they lifted it. So,
Why
but
did
we-
they lift it, Michael? Why did they?
They felt like the developer had met whatever requirements that they had put on.
Interesting.
Yet they don't realize that what's happening as a result of their construction is affecting our wells and where they're,
Right, but it's, I mean, Hopkinton gets some of their water from our wells.
It's
as
their
well.
wells.
As well. It's not just,
that's where I was going
there are
with that.
wells, but it's their water as well that's
That's
being
right,
impacted.
right, so,
We have made that point, that they get 25% of our water that we pull from that well goes to
Yeah.
Hopkinton.
And we can do a cease and desist in another community?
Yes, we can.
I don't know if you had the opportunity to drive up there, but they're already on Wilson Road. I mean, they're that close to Wilson Road right now.
Yeah.
Coming from down that hill.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
I haven't driven there
Okay.
recently.
So what is our next action, Michael?
So at your next meeting, I'll be asking for an executive session, and we'll discuss
Okay.
potential
Okay.
litigation there.
We'll do it at the start of
Michael, where's the
meeting.
Concom on this? Do they pretty much agree? Are they in the same?
We're going to talk
Have
to
they
them
seen
on.
this yet?
No, sorry, Rob. We're going to talk to them on Monday night.
Okay,
So
great.
I would think they would be on board. I mean, we're all working for the same purpose here.
Okay,
so
they see it the same way then. Well, we'll find
I
out.
would hope
Monday.
so. Next, I wanted to make mention of the first economic development report that Beth has put out. Those of you that haven't had a chance to see it, it's really good information. I was surprised to read that our business incentive program, we've invested $220,000 in funding, and what we've seen is a $3.5 million return on investment from
that's
private
good.
capital. So,
That's good.
obviously, that's a huge return on investment. Also, Beth does a lot of work working with a number of businesses with grant programs. I think we've helped 37 total businesses through grants. I'm thinking about just one program. Actually, it's been 58 businesses that we've worked through the different grant programs. So kudos to her and the work that she does. I think I think some people question why we have an economic development director or what our economic development director does, and I think this is good information to help explain that.
So I can attest to the new company that's in 128 Main Street. We're able to do that because of the work that Beth did to help them with some grants and finding the space and different things. And if you haven't had the chance to go in, they've done a really nice job, and they are now officially open.
They are officially open.
Yep.
Nice.
So it's nice. I mean, one of the things I think we should be most proud of is the fact that a lot of these vacant spaces that have been vacant for a long time are now filled or underutilized. I think the Telecron building for a while was fairly underutilized. Obviously, the Blockbuster building was vacant for years. Papa Gino's was vacant for years. So kudos to her. And then finally, you probably don't have any visibility into this because it's a town moderator appointment, but Jack Walsh has resigned from the Finance Committee since serving 2006. So, Steve, I think you
I
probably served with
Jack,
him.
Yeah.
Before that, I believe Jack was on the school committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
And has served the town in a number of different capacities. He continues to serve as their sealer of weights and measures. So, just want to wish him good luck and
Thank him for all
and
those
thank
years.
him for all his work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And,
He'll be greatly
he's
missed, for sure.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
lot of
thanks, Jack.
institutional
Wow.
knowledge.
Yeah,
It's
good
been a
guy.
while.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, and that's my report.
Okay.
Thank you. Board reports, I will go to the Jack in the Box. Rob.
Oh, you're talking to me, yes.
Rob in the
Okay.
Box.
Just, yeah, just two quick items. One is a couple things. So I was on the Happy Board and I saw there was a lot of concern about speeding on Myrtle and Oak Street, which I think is nothing new. But I was just wondering, you know, it seemed to be kind of a new level. Is there some kind of enforcement or ongoing situation there with speeding? This woman was telling a story of pretty horrendous near head-on collision with people who were drag racing. And so I just, you know, I know we're going through the police chief search, but should we be undertaking any special measures there? Are there, you know, what's the current status? Michael, I don't know if you've heard anything recently about incidents there or enforcement on those streets.
I want to answer that. Rob, I can tell you personally that yesterday and today, when I traveled Middle Street heading into Framingham, there were officers doing radar up there. So they
That's
are
great.
up there. They're not there during the same time of day, but they make it so that they're frequently there.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
And I don't know, you know, you go on, and that leads to my second point. When you go on the Happy Board, and also there's another one, if you're from Ashland, you know, and they're really kind of interesting, and we've talked about them many times. And I'm just wondering if, and this is just something to think about, and maybe we should talk about it as more of an agenda item, is should we have some sort of, and a number of us go on there, including Michael and others too, you know, just kind of say factual things at various times. But of course, as elected officials, we have to be very careful. I don't know, is there a place for someone on the town to just monitor that and just make factual referrals to people? Like, for example, if someone says, you know, there's all these speeders somewhere, should someone just say, well, the best thing to do is to send an email to, whether it's the chief or, you know, that's our process. If you have things you want to impart, and we often do that ourselves, say something, well, there's a plan posted or things like that. But maybe, you know, we do have Ashley as the communications person. Maybe that's something that could be in her beat, where she just posts factual reference material, or like communicate this way or something like that. So, because I get, you know, we've all seen the people that report things there and they ask about town business, but they're not actually communicating with the town. You know what I'm saying? So just, I don't know, we need to discuss it, but just food for thought to think about approaching certain Facebook groups in a systematic way, non-judgmental, not getting involved in discussions or arguments, but just saying, this is the process. So I just wanted to lay that out there. And my other quick update is about the MBTA Advisory Board. You recall we had that great meeting about the station, and so we had subsequently had advisory board meeting where the MBTA presented the capital improvement plan, and I asked them if the stations was on the plan, and surprise, surprise, they're not. And, you know, I said, well, they're still going to deteriorate whether you have them on a capital plan or not. So, you know, so we're going to need to do follow-up, and I'm going to look into, you know, I may ask for comments or proposals from this board to get included in the capital plan, but that's just an ongoing issue. And it wasn't, I didn't talk just about our station, but they're all similar: Grafton, Southborough, Westborough. They're all the same age and relatively same condition, and the T really needs to take control of that, or be impactful of that. And of course, you know, we're also thinking about our own plans, but I think it doesn't hurt to be on their capital plan, at least to keep pushing for that.
That's why we have you on that committee, Rob. Keep to their ear.
We'll
Keep the grindstone. Keep them at the grindstone.
So Rob,
the other meeting, go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna make a quick comment about, you know, your comments about about Facebook. I'm not going to designate the Happy Board in particular, because there's many boards out there. But, I think it's fair to say that we're all in favor of freedom of thought, but I think the problem with many of these postings, regardless of the board, the Facebook board, it's freedom from thought, unfortunately. And I think it's, to have somebody dedicated to try to manage answering things that are either factually incorrect or misrepresentations or fabrications. I don't know who in their right mind would want to take on a job like that. I don't think.
All right. Well, we can talk about it. You'd have to be, yes, I understand. Yeah. I still think there's a role for just standard public information, but, anyway. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about the MBTA, they also sponsored the DHCD, zoning thing, and there was a discussion on that. And I thought, basically we're kind of, I think, pretty well set up for that discussion. But just good to know the advisory board is taking that on and having DHCD come and talk about it too. So anyway, so that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. Yolanda.
So 3 things. The first is Metro West Regional Collaborative will have their next meeting on April 28th. It's still via Zoom at 8 a.m.
Yolanda, I can't hear you. I don't know.
Sorry, I forgot to push my on button. Thank you.
Okay.
So Metro West Regional Collaborative on 4/28 at 8 a.m. via Zoom. If you're interested, I can make sure you get an invite. The second thing through the collaborative is we are looking at having our spring legislative breakfast on May 6th in Framingham, at the Framingham Library. That's our tentative date. We haven't had a final confirmation, but I would recommend putting it on your calendars because it's a great way to get the ear of our legislators, and they should hopefully all be there. And then a little personal plug here. I, as an Ashland Lion, am representing our club and doing a polar plunge. It was supposed to happen this past Saturday, but due to water issues at Lake Pearl, it has been pushed to April 23rd, so it won't be quite as polar, but I'm still going in. So if you'd like, lionspolarplunge.com, and I've also posted it. So if you'd like to support me, and it all goes to Lions Eye Research.
Very good.
It's still going to be chilly, but that's okay.
It will be chilly, for sure.
I'm wearing my yellow to dress like a lion, so.
There you go. We're a lion.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you for what you guys do. Stephen.
Thank you, Joe. Just a couple of things. I just wanted to make note. I think I did at our last meeting, and I'll do it again at the next meeting. I just wanted to make reference to a Children's Literature Festival, Once Upon a Book Fest, that's going to be held at the Ashland Public Library on Saturday, May 14th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's a collaboration between the Public Library and Arts Ashland Alliance, and sponsored by a lot of great groups within town, and it's a full day dedicated to children's literature. So that's Saturday, May 14th, 10 a.m., 4 p.m. at the Ashland Public Library. A week from Saturday, we will be hosting our marathon breakfast at TJ's.
Right.
So that's always, it's been a few years since we've done that, and looking forward to the breakfast. Susan always arranges for really nice morning, and we get to meet some really
people.
amazing people that have dedicated their training and their bodies to support our grant program, and so that's really a good event. And then I just wanted to make note of the Affordable Housing Forum on Monday. I thought it was very well done. Brandy did a great job of managing it, and I think I learned. I hope everybody took something away from that. I think it's affordable housing is such a, and I think you spoke to this, Brandy. It's a very complicated issue, and there's not one way to fix it. But it is certainly something that I think is, particularly in Massachusetts, is a major issue. And the Boston Globe today had an article speaking about the median rental costs in Massachusetts, which is about $1,336. In Ashland, it's $1,851. That's the average rent.
Yep.
And, you know, so much of this is predicated on, of course, the supply of housing, what's available. And so there's not an easy fix. There's not a one-way fix. You know, inclusionary zoning, I think, you know, has its pros and it has its cons. I think that's going to be you know, an ongoing, interesting conversation. But, you know, clearly it's an issue throughout the state, and you know, you know, certainly I think our efforts to, as a board, to promote the percentages of affordable housing and the projects that we can have influence on, I think is a good thing. So, that's my tune.
Thank you. Ms. Brandy.
So I've been all about affordable housing the last couple weeks. So I was in front of the planning board talking about inclusionary zoning last week. Obviously, we had our Monday meeting with the select board, planning board, ZBA, and Affordable Housing Trust. And I do think that it was a really good conversation. I hope that the public and all the other boards that participated felt the same way. And thank you for everybody for making the time on a Monday night outside of our regularly scheduled meetings to attend. Also wanted to give a big thanks to our planning department, Peter Matchek, and especially Emma Snellings, who was our Zoom bomb queen, and my partner in crime for this whole thing, because I honestly don't think I would have survived without Emma. So. And then MAPC, who also was our experts that came to discuss. I think that it was a good discussion. I think that one of the things that came out of it, at least for me, is that we have a lot more education to do, public education around affordable housing and inclusionary zoning, because I do think that it wasn't ready for a town meeting. So, and me personally, I feel better about waiting and getting it right and then bringing it before the residents, rather than anyone feeling like we've rushed this process. Because I know those of us that are on the Housing Production Plan Committee have been working through this for months, but it is complicated. It's very complex, and it requires a lot of discussion. So, so more to come on all of that. And the only other thing I have is that I just want to wish my son a happy 15th birthday. He better be in bed right now. And he's not watching this at all, but I wouldn't be a good mom if I didn't wish my son a happy birthday. So.
Absolutely. Happy birthday.
So, that's it for me.
Good job. He's probably doing his laps now around town. Long-distance runner. Thank you for everybody's involvement with other things that are happening in town. Yeah, Brandy, again, thank you for the great job on Monday evening. That was a great meeting, a lot of discussion. You know, I'm all for affordable housing to begin with, and it's very difficult to find builders willing to build affordable units. You know, they're not in there, they're there to make money, and they're not there to, you know, subsidize housing. So if we come up with a program, which we have initially done as part of the trust, to subsidize some of those rental units that may be available, that may be the approach to take, and that's something that we'll continue to entertain, along with working side by side with Habitat for Humanity as well. So there are things that are available. There were tools in our toolbox to work with, and we do have sites available if we're willing to, you know, get these people that are hopefully willing to get involved in it. So hopefully that discussion will continue when we see progress instead of regress. Again, Affordable Housing Trust, we're meeting next week, so we'll continue that discussion as well. Sue, if there's any assistance that you need with getting the breakfast ready and getting packets ready for the runners, and I think right now, I don't know how many runners we actually have or how many bids have been out there, but let us know and I'll be happy to help in any way. And I met with Jack Lewis the other day for coffee, and we discussed just about everything and anything. Told him that we needed more Chapter 90 money. We need more Chapter 70 money. And We just need more money as a whole, right? And he, you know, we're waiting to see what the governor does with his budgets and stuff and moving on. So hopefully, I'll continue with my. He did his budget, yeah, but they're waiting for approval. Yeah, we'll just wait for approval. So I'll keep my ear to him and continue reminding him that we need additional funding. And lastly, you mentioned something about the Lions, and I wanted to give condolences to the Lions because they lost a very dear member, Vin Ferraro, who was an active member for over 40 plus years, maybe 50 years now. And real great guy, raised his family here, and God bless his soul. And we're going to miss him. He was a great guy. The number of years that I was on the Lions, he was a gentleman. He was a gentleman Lion for sure. So with that, my condolences to the entire Ferraro family. And we have a public safety meeting next week, and we'll continue that, and hopefully we'll have some good answers for things. With that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, Rob. Thank you, Susan.
Good
Thank you
night,
very
Rob.
much.
Good night, Rob.
And good night,
Susan.
everybody, and we'll see you at our next meeting.
Bye,
Good night,
everybody.
and God bless.
All right, bye.